Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anatomy of an Adaptation. This is a podcast that aims to compare and contrast classic novels with their cinematic adaptations, and today we are talking about maybe one of the most classic novels out there. I am not alone, I am joined, as very often recently, Carson Timar. How are you doing, Carson? Thank you for being here.
I am fantastic. Yeah, this has been an episode I've been anticipating for months. I'm very excited to be here. Excited to be talking with Hillary and yourself. So thrilled to be here.
Indeed, indeed. And as mentioned, we're also joined by Hilary White once again. Thank you for being back. How are you, Hilary?
I'm doing very well, and unlike Carson, I haven't been preparing for months, but I've been preparing really cramming this week. So a lot of my a lot of my time has been spent looking into all the adaptations of Frankenstein and studying the book as well. So I'm excited.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I feel you. Like every time we have one of those big episodes where we tackle either a really famous book or just something that's been adapted so many times, I kind of become exhausted by it towards the end. Like this feels like the last goal, the last achievement of the month. Just like digesting everything Frankenstein related and then finally talking about it. And of course, listeners, as you can see from the title, as you've already heard today, we're talking about a classic novel that's been adapted countless times. We're not going to be talking about all the adaptations of this work. We're only going to be focusing on three of them because today we're talking about the 1818 book Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, the 1931 James Whale Frankenstein adaptation, 1994's Mary Shelley's Frankenstein by Kenneth Branagh, and lastly, 2025 Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein.
Sun! Sun! Light! Face it. Sunlight. Sun is life. The warmth. Yes. Victor. 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 Yes. Yes. Of course you are. Of course you are.
The legend behind Frankenstein is basically as famous as the book itself. 1816, Mary Shelley, married to Percy Shelley. They're together with John Polidori and Lord Byron in a castle in Geneva, just like trying to come up with some ghost stories, something to entertain each other during a thunderstorm. And that's when the spark comes to her, the spark of the story of male hubris, of science versus God, nature versus nurture. It's the story of Frankenstein, published in 1818. A classic book, a book that I've read twice beforehand, both times in Italian. This was my first time experiencing it in English. But first, I'm curious to hear how the two of you feel about Frankenstein. If you have some history with it, Hilary, how about you? Go first. What are your thoughts on Mary Shelley's novel?
Well, I the first time I read this was several years ago. I don't know exactly what year it was, and it was a recommendation from somebody who loved the book very much, and, I read it and thought, "It's brilliant," like, a lot of these classic books are. They've been around for a long time for a reason, and, rereading it this time, it's pretty much as I remember it. There's little things that resonate differently or I'm sure that I forgot, which is what happens with any book you read, especially the great ones, seeing things from another perspective. One of the things that I noticed about it is how it began to relate to other classic books just this time. Like the nesting doll of narration in it made me think of Wuthering Heights, which I know we'll be tackling down the road.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
other episodes of Anatomy of Adaptation, like this incredible amount of hubris, like, the episode we had about Into the Wild, it was the 3 of us again, and, just a lot of, themes and commentary, just notes I took down about, like, Mary Shelley's random commentary about the founding of America and the colonization of Peru and Africa is very, ahead of its time. It's critical. There's just there's it's a pretty rich material to mine, and as we get further along in this conversation, it's going to become more and more apparent, at least where I'm coming from, where I'm beginning to realize I don't think this book has been adapted. I think it's inspired a lot of work, but the book is so good, and I haven't seen it on screen yet. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm interested in what Carson has to say about his relationship with the book.
First time read for me. When I say I'm a Frankenstein stan, I really just mean the James Whale version. I don't actually mean the story that
Oh
it is inspired
wow.
by. I've never read this book, but I got my copy. Netflix gave it to me. Thank you, Netflix. And I read through it and I loved it. Yeah, I mean, it's a great book, right? Like, I don't know. I think there's probably some aspects of the story, especially in its conclusion, that I maybe am not in love with, but certainly the book does better than I think any film has ever done. As Hillary mentioned, I think the structure of this is very, very effective. Jumping around different perspectives, I think it's a very engaging novel. I also just read earlier this year Moby Dick, which I talked about, I'm sure, in multiple places because I
Yeah.
really kind of got obsessed over it, and both feel somewhat similar in a sense where they're both collections of a lot of different texts and a lot of different ideas kind of smashed together in a way that my brain finds very, very pleasing. There's obviously just like this beautiful longing of emotion in here, especially from the creature. I think my favorite parts of the novel certainly are when we're hearing from the creature directly and some of those longing thoughts. And those are also, when we get to those adaptations, my favorite part of those films. So I think that also adds up. But yeah, for a first read, I was really impressed by Frankenstein. I really, this is one of those classics, and a lot of the classics do this, to be clear. So this is not an exception, but I think this is one of the classics that really lived up to the hype.
Absolutely. I it's something that I feel very often. I think just in general, there is such a thing as having such iconic, like genuinely iconic works of art that have inspired so many people that in its own weird way, actually experiencing the original work of art that started it all, in this case reading Frankenstein, is not so much, it doesn't feel familiar, it feels special and unique in its own way. It's not like you're reading it just thinking, oh yeah, it's hitting all the beats that you know from the 60 film adaptations and the 20 video games and the other books that have been inspired by it and the sequels and whatever. Not at all. I think you touched on it very well, Hillary, that it's such a dense book. I think that's often a mistake I've seen from just like general people who are looking for, oh, I'm looking for like a classic, like maybe a horror. Oh, I'm just gonna read Frankenstein. I'm just gonna read Dracula. It's like it's not as straightforward as we now mean it when we say it's like a horror book. In this case, a gothic horror, a science fiction book. Even we could say it's much more broad and but broad in the sense of tackling so many different elements and genres, and it's honestly awe-inspiring. I think there is something special even in just the way that she starts it. Coming at it not from the experience of someone in the early 19th century reading it, just thinking like, hey, I'm just going to read this book, Frankenstein, not knowing anything, but someone from nowadays going into it and being presented with a character that is not Frankenstein. And we are in the, is it like Russia or like in the cold north, and it's this expedition. It's like, why are we following this guy who's writing letters to his beloved, just looking to get back home? And then you're introduced to Frankenstein, and then you have that nesting doll narrative that you mentioned, and it's so epic in scope, yet intimate in subject. I think that's the best way I can put it. And for it to be written in 1818 by a 19-year-old Mary Shelley, and then like she revised it a few years later down the line, and it was originally written under a pseudonym. It wasn't even her own name, but it's been corrected since then. But yes, it's a powerful book. I'm curious, like Carson already mentioned, that he really connected with the parts of the sequences following the creature. I think honestly for me, that's when the book really comes to life, when the creature actually presents itself to Victor and starts talking about the experiences that he has had. I think that entire part is stellar. But I'm curious, Hillary, if you have any sequence in specific in this book that has captured your imagination or has compelled you emotionally in any way.
I'm in complete agreement with both of you. It's the narrative from the creature's point of view where I was the most rapt. I listened to an audiobook version of this because I'm also
Mm,
reading Crime and Punishment, and actually just was reading so much about the films that I thought I don't have the time. And I want to give a shout out to the man who did this. His name is Rob Gall, Goll. He put up the entire novel on YouTube. He's a professional voiceover
oh,
actor. I think he's
nice.
in the theater. He has a website. Some of his stuff is on Audible. I'd really recommend listening to his books, or if you have not heard Frankenstein or read Frankenstein, this is a really good way to do it. But when he narrated the creatures um, part of the story, that really, really struck me. I could not, do anything else, and it is the most important part, and I think the most important thing about Shelley and books of this time, whether, I've talked about Crime and Punishment, I mentioned Wuthering Heights, other classics that are considered, quite important all these years later, is that they take their time. And the
Yes.
beginning, like Carson said, like it takes time. You're getting to know who this captain is, who he's writing to, what he's all about, why he is out there and what he's trying to accomplish, and how all of that ends up being derailed because he encounters Victor Frankenstein and his tale of woe. Um, so it it's an exercise in patience, and it's an exercise in detail, which is something as human beings now, kind of tied to the themes of the novel, we've evolved so much and our attention spans have gotten shorter. In some ways it is challenging, but it's so rewarding at the same time to actually just sit with these characters and hear a creature talk for several chapters about being rejected horribly after making so much progress. So that's my long-winded answer, but yeah, just well, any sequence, but particularly that those passages with the creature. I think all of us can agree that's what really sells the whole thing.
Totally. I also believe it's something just directly tied to the way I think you put it very beautifully actually. We have evolved so much in terms of attention spans, but also in the terms of how we want stories to be told, we need stories to be told, where it's more black and white, more direct, more this, more that. And there is something that I don't want to say there's no moralizing from Shelley's part. There is, but in a way that's not patronizing in any way, or I don't know, shallow. It doesn't come across as shallow or moralistic, even though she does. It is the story of a man who has done horrible things in his life, coming at the end of it, recognizing what he's done, coming to terms with it, and trying to change someone else's mind from repeating the same mistakes. The importance of among the many themes, I think there is this element of hindsight inherent in the narrative. You are hearing the tale of Frankenstein from his mouth, from his experience. So you have the subjectivity of it all, but you also have the regret. Those small moments where he mentions how he wished something went in a different direction. He shouldn't have done this, should have done that. That makes him less of a protagonist in the way we might mean a hero, generally speaking. I think that's often not, I don't mean like nowadays with like 2025, but just like in the past century, in the way that art and like stories have become more um, commercial in nature. We need, the relatable protagonist. I wouldn't say Victor Frankenstein is relatable per se, but he has human characteristics of ambition, of hubris, of all those things that make him compelling to follow. But it is when the creature comes to life and lives and experiences the world and then recounts it that you kind of get the point of the book in a way that we'll definitely talk about with how the adaptations tackle this element of how the creature speaks, if it even speaks, if he speaks. But yeah, and I'm wondering if you have any other passages that particularly caught your attention, or themes, because I also want to talk about the ending a little bit of the book, something usually reserved for later on, but I'd like to um, go straight into it here. You have this entire sequence where the creature becomes violent. The creature is very intelligent, very smart, and starts committing some crimes to ruin Victor's life, make it so that he is miserable until the end of days. There are some characters that we are not going to be seeing pretty much in almost any of the adaptation, like Justine, who gets convicted for a crime that the creature did, that unfortunately Frankenstein can't confess to or try to help her out because he's gonna lose all the reputation and respect and freedom that he currently has, that just slowly erodes away at his soul. And you get to the final moments where he has told the tale to the captain. Ultimately, he's just too tired to keep going on. He has reached the end of the world, basically, trying to follow this creature, and he's just done with life. And he dies, he passes away, and the creature finds him and is actually grieving the loss of his creator, the loss of his father. And they ultimately decide to go away in a literal blaze of glory, uh, and the captain of the ship decides to go back home, having learned the moral of the tale, in a way. I don't know how the two of you feel. Maybe you, Carson. How do you feel about where the book ends up? I think you mentioned something, right, about the ending maybe not
Yeah,
sticking the landing fully.
I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm not a huge fan of, and even, and we'll get into the movies. And again, I think here, because you spend so much more time with these characters and they flesh them out a lot more than obviously movies just naturally can, I think it does work better in the book than it does in some of the adaptations. I've never been a big fan of the creature like forgiving or coming to terms with the creator, who I think ultimately does this horrible thing and then treats this creature very cruelly in a lot of ways, and yes, does face the consequences of that. I feel like it's just a weird last minute turnaround to be like, actually I'm gonna look back at you fondly. I don't think that necessarily works for me. I also just didn't love the whole like, I'm just gonna go die now, like, and especially in the book he's just like, my time has come, I'm just gonna take this bow and I'm just gonna go die. Life is over, there's no point in living. And it's like, I don't know, that always is like, it's not portrayed as being like tragic, but it is just like, I've never been a big fan of that concept of just like at the end being like, well, I guess I'll just kill myself because there's not much point in living anymore. I just feel like not only is it just too simplistic, I think the ending is too simplistic, but I also think it's also just like, it's not rewarding for me as a reader who's read this entire story just for that to be the ending. It doesn't do a lot for me, I'll be honest. I think actually I would say the ending is probably the weakest part of the book for me.
When
Interesting. How
I
about you, Hillary?
was yeah, when I heard the audiobook, it just stopped, and I thought, "Wait, is that really the ending of the book?" And I rewound it, and it just ended on the same sentences, and then I pulled out my copy of the book and read it, and I thought, "Oh, that is a very abrupt ending," because it pretty much ends with the monster saying, well, I shouldn't say monster, the creature. The
The
creature says,
PC term.
the PC term. I don't want to misidentify this creation,
We're
but
getting woke here. We're getting
we're very,
woke.
very woke. He basically goes out the window, right? And then he's gone. And I just thought that's a very abrupt ending to the letter that is being written, and it doesn't really fit in entirely with the narrator's style. So it was a little bit abrupt, but for me, it does make sense. And maybe it's because there's differences between Carson and I. I think maybe there is something a little bit more nihilistic about myself, where it's, cut and dry, not necessarily the forgiveness part, because I don't have a creator to forgive necessarily. But as far as, cutting my losses, or if I was in his shoes, like, I've done all these terrible things, I'm not going to have someone to experience this with me. Maybe I will go out there and just kind of drift and perish. Although there's been so much made of that creature as far as sequel material after that, there's always the question of, did he die, or did he just say he was going to die, or was he going to attempt to die and realize he couldn't? That's not really established in the book either, but it's a lot of not to turn it into a pun, but there's a lot of raw material there for other writers and creators to come in and say like, "But what if he didn't die?" You know?
Like it's just waiting for the for the sequel, authorized or unauthorized. Um, I get that, but I don't know. I actually really like the ending of the book. But it's something that just goes into. We haven't really talked about the way the book is written. But Shelley was surrounded by poets and these pompous artists, you could say, of the time, like Lord Byron and Percy Shelley together, surrounding her as she was writing this. There is a lot of genuine poetry in the in the narration, in the dialogue present here. I could even read, if it's okay with you, just like the final lines of the book, because I think there is something very poetic in it. It feels like it's less. There are parts in this book, especially when the creature speaks, where it feels like it's less a matter of reading a story, and it's more like you're reading an epic poem, like you're reading like Paradise Lost or one of those ones. Because like the last like paragraph of the book is, "But soon," he cried with sad and solemn enthusiasm, "I shall die, and what I now feel be no longer felt. Soon these burning miseries will be extinct. I shall ascend my funeral pyre triumphantly and exult in the agony of the torturing flames. The light of that conflagration will fade away. My ashes will be swept into the sea by the winds. My spirit will sleep in peace, or if it thinks, it will not surely think thus. Farewell." He sprang from the cabin window as he said this, upon the ice raft which lay close to the vessel. He was soon borne away by the waves and lost in darkness and distance. And there's something in the way that she writes his dialogue. Again, it's a poem. It's beautiful, but I also understand the abruptness of it that you both mentioned. Um, it's yeah, I don't know if there's any like insight into Mary Shelley's thought process, if she ever spoke about um, why she took the story in certain directions, because she also keeps changing locations multiple times. We're in Geneva, we are in the Alps, we are here, we are there, we're in the north of the world, and it's again, it's epic in scope, but yeah, very passionate,
No,
poetic.
I actually like the creature's dialogue, and I mean, you can see all these things that like sprung from this book. As far as you could describe that description as metal or very goth, um, very dark. And there's like a part of that that appeals to me as well, where it's more like, yeah, sure, like that's I think where I'm going. It's just like your ashes, and then you're forgotten, and that's it, kind of. I guess it links back to other monologues like that, like a lot of people quote, "Tears in the rain," all these amazing things I've
Yep,
seen.
yeah.
Now it's nothing. It's just tears in the rain. It's just those last 2 sentences where I thought like, "Wait, you just said this really poetic thing and he's gone?" It's just not what I
Sprang by the
expected,
cabin window. That's it.
but you have to get used to it? And it might have just been the way that it was narrated to me. Like it's a YouTube video, so it just ends and I thought, "Wait, no, he didn't say like this was this was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley." I thought my internet had gone out or something. Um,
My version of the audiobook is like the Swan Lake theme in the beginning and the ending,
oh, nice.
which
Nice.
is
Yeah,
cute.
no music on my part, but it would add to the experience, I'm sure. So the ending makes sense. I think for me it was more of a technical glitch as far as like those last 2 paragraphs.
Hey, I also would say the writing was not the issue, right? Like the writing throughout
Mhm.
is beautiful. I think that last monologue, if you just take it in isolation, is beautiful. I think for me, and I also come in with this understanding or this preconceived notion about viewing this book through the context of othering and queerness and blah blah blah. Um, so I think for me that also affects my view at this nihilistic ending, where I'm like, I want something out of the story that probably is not fair to put on this book, but certainly no matter how I feel about it, it's not the writing that's the issue. The writing is, as everyone has mentioned, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, yeah. And, like there's so many I think you were talking about it as well, Hillary, for a second there. um there is something very tragic just about thinking about this ending, and I understand the nihilism that's not very appealing about it, unfortunately. But to have this creature, that the whole journey that the creature goes on, it is one of looking for love, looking for acceptance. There's the entire part where he confronts Victor and he's just asking him for companionship because he's gone through the world, he's traveled it, and he just keeps being rejected. He keeps being alone, and in the end, even that companion is denied to him. He cannot have one. He cannot have anyone to support him and be present there for life. It is borderline vampiristic in notion in the way that we mean it now, with the sense of immortality and eternity and just like going through life alive forever in the same state while everything else around you just perishes. That's the cycle of life, and the creature should not exist. It's not a miracle, it's not a mistake, it's just something that happened because of a very stubborn intelligent man. But now that it's here, you have to reckon with the consequences. And this entire part, I love the way that Victor tackles just how to deal with the creature, which sounds silly to say it like that, but that's literally what happens in the book. Like he's spending all this time just trying to put together and bring back life to the dead and just make it happen, make it work. He doesn't even describe the process because he doesn't want to influence anyone to actually follow through again in the future. Um, but the moment he actually has the creature in front of him, he's like, "Oh yeah, now what?" Basically. Um, and so everything that he goes through that ultimately leads to some abuse, to you mentioned the othering, like not treating it as a living being, treating it as a beast, eat as a beast. um, it's brutal, it's really really rough. And then to hear the perspective of the creature once time has gone by and they've evolved and grown into this smart and well-spoken being, adds this other layer of humanity to the whole tale that I think it's probably the main reason why it has endured for so long. Like we're talking, it's been over 200 years. I think this is the oldest book we ever talked about um, on this podcast, and it's still being adapted. It's still influencing people, and it still works considering all three of us have read it, reread it as well now, and it's effective.
Um, One thing that popped into my mind was it wasn't on this podcast, but it was on Uncut Gems. We did an episode about the Elephant Man, and one of the things I walked away from is that there is a little bit of the Elephant Man in all of us. I think there's a little
Mhm.
bit of the creature in all of us, and there's parts of ourselves that we struggle with or find ourselves in situations where we are considered freakish or aren't completely accepted. People experience rejection um, quite commonly, unless like you're an incredibly beautiful, charismatic person and you don't know what rejection is. You're very, very fortunate, but most of us mortals go through that. One thing I did think about a lot was not only Mary Shelley's experience and her feelings of not fitting in and rejection must have been a part of her writing this character. And I wanted to point out there's a really good book about her life that a friend lent me years ago called Romantic Outlaws by Charlotte Gordon, which really goes into detail about her life through a modern lens because it's a more recent book, and what exactly she had to deal with these men around her and women. And of course, the Frankenstein origin story has been adapted 3 times, and I felt like I had to mention those as well. So, there was 3 films about her writing Frankenstein that came out in the late '80s. Gothic in '86,
Yeah.
Rowing in the Wind in '88, Haunted Summer, also 1988, which, um, just kind of showed, like, how she conceived the monster and how it may have, followed her throughout her life, which was very, very tragic. If you want to read like a really just unbelievable account of a life, read Romantic Outlaws or just go to her Wikipedia page because this one went through a lot of shit. And then, of course, there was the Mary Shelley movie that came out in 2017, starring Elle Fanning. Just as an aside,
Mm.
I would recommend watching that with Effie Gray. that stars Dakota Fanning. So you have 2 Fanning sisters in these, biopics about women dealing with artistic men around them controlling everything and finding their place in the world.
Is it a good one?
So,
Would you recommend it properly or?
Mary Shelley, I didn't think very much of it. I don't remember it very well, but Effie Gray, it did touch me a little bit. It's written by Emma Thompson as well, who's, I mean, she's a good writer,
Oh,
and it's more about someone getting out of an abusive situation in the 19th century. So that was an interesting thing. But
nice.
though I've seen Gothic, I don't remember it, and Rowing with the Wind is very over the top and kind of operatic. My friends watched it when we were teenagers, and like we ended up laughing a lot more than we should have. Like Hugh Grant plays Lord Byron, and he's still, like, stuttering and stuff,
Oh
like, "Oh,
wow.
I'm just so affably charming," and it's just like, "Yeah, I don't know. You're not Lord Byron." Anyway, but she must have felt like a freak during her lifetime. Nowadays, it seems to make sense, who this woman was or how she would be integrated into society today, but back then, it was what she was doing was almost criminal, like running away from home, taking up with, like, the equivalent of, like, Mick Jagger back in their day. Um, so she must have felt really rejected by her family and really rejected by society, and maybe that's what came on The Creature, but I kinda wanna spin away from that now because what I ended up thinking about a lot, and I don't have this perspective, and I'm not even gonna pretend, is that what this film what these film adaptations and the book itself means to queer people, people who have been rejected by their families, who have been told to their face that they're, an abomination in the face of God in some situations. How can you not identify with this character? So I want to turn it back over to you about how the book character may have related to your understanding about those feelings, or if it was its own separate thing.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely you can read it with that scope. I mean, I wouldn't say I think the clearest conversation we can give or detail to point out from the book or any of these film adaptations is only one that we were talking about comes from an authentic queer perspective as far as the director or the creative voice behind it, right? So I think that is why I naturally gravitate, and I think that statement is so much more tailor made for that conversation and really enhancing what is there. But in the book or any of these, I mean, you have the same theme of this creature, this person, who by society, due to something outside of their control, has been deemed monstrous. In the actual book, he's a lot more of a villain at times, right? He does actions that
He
you
has a body
point to
count.
as being villainous. Yeah, he has a body count. He has he's framing people for crimes. I mean, he's doing all this stuff to where it's like he's not. And we'll get into with each individual film is again it's not like the 30s version or the 30s films where you look and he's this innocent guy who's just trying to do everything and he just doesn't know what he's doing. Here he makes much more intentional issues for people, to where maybe society and certain individuals kind of reject him based off more than just his nature. But still, I mean, immediately he is rejected for his nature. He still has these moments that are absolutely present. I think with these texts and with so many of these classic novels, especially the ones behind the Universal monsters, is the easiest place to look at it. That theme of othering, I don't also want to say you can only view it as queerness. You can be othered for a million reasons outside of
Many
queerness or outside of
grounds.
identity. Absolutely. So I think the text is so rich with that theme that you can apply it and find that conversation in here. Absolutely. I would actually say in the book, there's a lot about immigration you could talk about and these lines between countries. And Nick talks about how they're always jumping around. I think you could find a lot there also. It's very rich. But no, I mean, I think with any text of Frankenstein, it's impossible for me not to view it through that lens. And you absolutely can find substance in the book or in any of the films.
Yeah. Speaking of Carson, would you like to introduce us then fully into the 1941 James Whale adaptation?
Yeah, well, let me take you guys back to 1930. Universal Pictures, Universal Studios, whatever they're called at the time. It's dying. It's dead, dude. They don't have money. It's bomb after bomb after bomb. It's going bad. And then all of a sudden they release Dracula. Dracula blows up. It's huge. It's the biggest hit they've had, maybe ever. Don't fact check me on that. So they're like, wow, let's make more of these horror films. And Bela Lugosi is like, you know what? I've always wanted to play Henry Frankenstein. And they say, well, you could play the monster, but let's do the adaptation. They hire this guy, Robert Flowery, to make the film. Robert Flowery is like, screw any nuance. What do you mean the monster has nuance and humanity? Remember, it's 1931 or 1930. So I assume he's like, that's gay. Get that out of here. And he's like, okay, we're going to make a story where it's just this evil creature killing everyone and there's nothing else to it. Bela Lugosi's like, no, fuck that. I'm out. That's stupid. Then eventually Robert gets fired. Then this guy, James Whale, we don't even know how he got on set. Maybe he was just like, he snuck in or something. He's just there and he's like, okay, I will make the story. And they're like, have you ever read the book? And he's like, probably not. I don't think I ever have, but I kind of get what it's about. So what if I just make like my own kind of original story? We can have like maybe some scenes from the book, but we're not really going to follow the book at all. Like it's definitely an original adaptation. Let's say we're going to take some creative liberties, and he makes Frankenstein. Impossible, I think, not to also just lump in immediately then makes Bride of Frankenstein. Those two films go together so wonderfully. A much more simplified story about this guy who makes the creature. The creature escapes. He tries to interact with society, ultimately gets rejected, and then they both meet doom at the end. You don't get the Arctic. You don't get a lot of those narrative beats that we talked about with the book. Very much so a simplistic story, but easily combining it with Bride of Frankenstein, because Bride of Frankenstein, let's be clear, is just like a little step above the normal Frankenstein. Creates, in my opinion, the best, a big step, you're right, creates, in my opinion, easily the best adaptation of the story to date. Again, James Whale, a queer director, putting queerness into the film, injecting it with this idea of existing in a world that no matter what you do will betray you and hurt you and attack you and monster you and try to burn you alive. The iconography here is some of the most iconic iconography ever put into any art form ever. If you think of Frankenstein at home, I guarantee you are thinking of this Frankenstein. Incredible performance, amazing backdrops. Just watching it now, some of those backdrops, especially when they're like wrinkly so you can just tell they're on a soundstage, it just warms your heart. Incredible to see, incredible to talk about. I could go on and on and on, and I will, but I'm fascinated to turn it over to you guys. Do you enjoy the 1930 version of Frankenstein as much as I do?
I'm curious to hear Hillary's thoughts first
You
about this.
It's not the first time I've watched it, but, I came to Frankenstein late. I think I saw it within the past several years. It's just not one of the older films I grew up with or, watched when I was a teenager, and, I mean, I took notes on it this time. I think and some of them are kind of amusing. I'm looking at them now, like Mrs. Percy v. Shelley. That's how they credited Mary Shelley in the beginning. I wrote down, "What?" I
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like,
yeah,
"What
yeah.
the fuck?" Like, this whole time, this woman has been trying to establish herself as a writer, and, they credit her that way. I think there was a reason behind it, I read somewhere, but I forgot what it was, but my reaction was, "Geez, wow, she doesn't even get her own name on here." Um, I agree with Carson. There are things about this film, although, James Whale definitely brought his own themes and intention and storytelling to the story. The way that Boris Karloff looks, the addition of the deformed sidekick, played by Dwight Frye, really underrated actor. I like his Renfield more, but just I wanted to give him a shout out. The use of lightning, Frankenstein's fear of fire, all of these things became what the 20th century iteration of the creature or Frankenstein's monster was, and it's incredibly important, and it's a short film, it's fun to watch, and like Carson said, there is this charm to it that, you just see these people walking out into situations and you think, "Oh, that's a set. Look at it." It's just like, "That's not a real skeleton. That's not a real hill." Like, everything is about it is fake, but you love it anyway because it's its own thing. It's James Whale's Frankenstein. It's his creature, and, it doesn't take itself too seriously either, which I think really does give it the charm that makes it, classic in a way, which is a difference from other adaptations that have been made where it's like, "We're gonna be serious about this," and I'm like, "You can't see me." I'm like, bringing my fist down, as a joke, on a table, like, "This has to be done in a serious way." Um, which, like Carson mentioned, like, there is something about bringing queer people into a situation. You might get a film that's a bit weird or off kilter and stuff because it's just from another point of view, but that point of view really does count for something, and it does make something very original and kind of amazing. So, for my part, I think it's my 2nd, maybe 3rd time seeing it. I'm going for my 2nd, but I mean, I enjoy it. Like, how can you not love Frankenstein?
It's hard not to love him. Hard not to love him. This was also my second time watching this film. I think I watched like most of those classic Universal monsters like almost a decade ago at this point, 8 years ago or something. Um, and even like I think we talked about it maybe on Clappercast with Carson. We spoke about Dracula, right? The 1941 version with Lugosi.
We did all
Um,
the originals, yeah.
there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I had some problems with that I didn't really have with Frankenstein, but in a way they do kind of coincide. I'm not in love with this film. I really like it. I love Bride of Frankenstein. Like I rewatched that as well.
That's
Bride of
so
Frankenstein is
campy. Yes.
just 5 out of 5 masterpiece. Um, with 1941's Frankenstein, and I for the first time I actually read that deeper into the productions, and it was interesting listening to Carson as well. But outside of being primarily just like a project for cash, like Dracula was, they were both not so much adaptations of the book of someone like reading the book and writing it and being like we're gonna make it a film, but they were primarily adaptations of plays which were plays made for the stage, for very cheap stages, for very small stages where people didn't have long attention spans, so they were already butchered versions of the original source material that then was translated into film. And there is that stage play nature to it where there's like no music pretty much for the most part, outside of like the beginning and the end. It's a lot of people walking into the sets and going left and right and talking, moving to another part, talking. I think I want to say I love half of this film. I think like I do love that they changed it to Henry Frankenstein because people would think Victor was too harsh a name for a protagonist. They make him more likable. They make him a bit kooky, but he has a heart of gold underneath it all. It's fine. But I everything that is about him and the experiment and the creature coming to life and unintentionally terrorizing the town and interacting with God, I think all of that is great. Everything with Elizabeth, a character we have not really talked about in the book, because in the book Elizabeth is love interest from childhood. That's all she does. Not really. I wouldn't say a very an important character for the narrative, but I wouldn't say anyone's favorite character. Maybe I don't know if any of you love Elizabeth. Have strong opinions about Elizabeth. But in this film, she's like the cookie cutter universal blonde lady, love interest of the protagonist, and things with her and with the father of Victor, and it's just kind of, I don't want to say it's a slog because again it's a 70-minute movie, but they are the parts that I wish I could fast forward. Just like I don't like they're not giving me anything. But it is interesting going forward, and I'm curious if you have some rebutts to this. But it is interesting that pretty much all the adaptations we're going to talk about the director made his own, because we're all male directors, but each one of them made it his own different version, despite having the source material at the core of it.
I
I don't know
was
if
I was I was so surprised by the name switch. That was like, wait, he's not Victor, he's Henry. They gave him his friend's name, and I've heard they do that with other
yes,
Dracula adaptations too.
you're right. Yeah,
Which
they
it's
change
like
names.
Mina and Lucy get switched sometimes. I'm not exactly sure why that decision is made, but it does already show like there's already changes being made. Like Henry isn't there, Ernest isn't in any of the adaptations. Ernest is just like a forgotten character, even in the novel to a certain extent. And I went down a rabbit hole about that, and I found out people have written sequels about Ernest Frankenstein, like how he deals with his entire family being dead and recovering from that, because he just kind of got forgotten. Um,
By
and
everyone.
yeah, everyone just kind of, they died or yeah, they're dead mostly. But I do like some of some of the improvements, and like you said with plays, that's something that I've been learning a lot about early film, is that a lot of them are based on plays. Plays were the comic books of the time, they were constantly adapting plays and books, and adapting them over and over again, sometimes just within 5, 10 years of each other. So it is humbling to think we complain a lot about remakes and reboots these days, but if you go back to the 1920s and 30s, they were doing it all the time. I mean, and Frankenstein was an indication of that. It's definitely a notable marker as far as, like, this is something that's going to be done, and it's going to be done again and again and again.
Indeed.
I will throw a question out. How do you guys feel about the ending? Not specifically, it is in the first Frankenstein, but Bride of Frankenstein more poignantly. But in both films, really, the monster chooses to attempt to kill, or in the Bride of Frankenstein, actually kill his creator. Unlike in the book, where there is that chase element, but ultimately he grieves him, and ultimately he has this peace and like this understanding of saying goodbye. They really get rid of that in the 30s. I mean, they don't include that dynamic really at all. As well as just in general, I will say the monster doesn't have a lot of like voice. No, he doesn't give any monologues in the 30s versions, but especially that relationship with the creator. I think when you look at, obviously, yes, it's a completely different story in a lot of ways. But if you really look at the dynamic, that's the biggest change, I would say, is that there isn't that romantic feeling, and I don't mean romance as far as relationship, but just like there isn't that romanticism of like, oh my God, my creator, my connection to humanity, like goodbye, I forgive you, I pay tribute to you. That's not here in the Bride of Frankenstein. He literally says we belong together, we belong dead as he blows up the lab. How do you feel about that change?
Uh,
Mm.
Maybe go, Hillary.
No, actually, I'll have you go first. I need to gather my thoughts
Okay.
on that one.
Um, I, I think primarily goes to what you were saying of how they represent the creature of Frankenstein. Boris Karloff is a mixture of his performance. I mean, is a mixture of childlike wonder and animal rage. And I do feel it's an element. It's one of those interesting things where I feel at the same time it's important to both recognize the film as its own standalone piece of entertainment, especially because it's been so wildly influential over the century almost at this point. But it is something that's like, yeah, you know, all of those things are inherent to the film. They're not a part of the book. The film, as you said, is more simplistic narratively. I think that also becomes a problem, so to say, with the themes. It's not a particularly rich story. There's not really much thought about, oh, the creation and being a god, and there are things that are said. There are memorable quotes like, ah, this is what it feels like to be god. Cool. What about the ramifications of that, man? No, 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 no. We're not really gonna talk about that. But because it wasn't the style of the time, like this is accepting it as a piece of just pure entertainment can make me like be like, okay, like they didn't really care about that, and fair enough. This wasn't the point of this film. Which leads me to the ending, which was where your question started. I do like the ending. I think the ending is iconic in its own way. I would argue, and I mean, you experienced it yourself actually. Like the ending of the 1941 film is more iconic than the actual ending of the book. Most of the times when I think about the ending of Frankenstein, the first thing I do have in my mind is the mill burning down. It is like I do hate the classic. It's like a classic universal thing of like the that little time not ending, but it's like no, Victor was alive all along, and he can go back and get married, dear old Elizabeth. Which also, just to say, I'm sorry, I don't want to ramble too much, but just I find it so funny. Like there's the entire sequence where they're about to have the wedding in the mansion, and it's like, oh, the creature, it's here, it's upstairs. They go upstairs. Oh no, wait, it's coming from the basement. They go way down in the basement. The creature is just in the garden. They just keep hearing it. I don't know how any of that works. I don't know what sense of hearing they have. But anyway, just like one of those feel it feels very silly but not on purpose. It feels just silly by nature of making movies commercially at the time. It's like, yeah, like we need Elizabeth to be alone, so they're just running around the house. Sure, why not? Just it's playful, but the ending I do really like. And I don't mind that they have just a different relationship, because you have that childlike wonder, you have that animalistic nature to the creature, a creature who's only experienced violence and pain. The only moment of joy that it has with the little kid, with Mary, he accidentally drowns her, and is sought after by an angry mob. And at the end of the chase, it's just reacting impulsively, and that ultimately leads to its demise in the 31 film. Then, of course, you have Bride of Frankenstein, but yeah, I do think Bride of Frankenstein has more of the themes of Shelley. The fact that it opens with the Shelley and Byron and Percy together, just like talking about the book, and then she considers, oh, there's actually continuation. Oh, that's not how the story ended, actually, and they go into this sequel. Is Yeah, it has more qualities of the book actually than the original film does. But you can go, Hillary. I'm curious to hear how you feel about this.
Well, I'm sure that Carson knows about this as well, but the original ending was that Victor dies. Like, the second he hits the ground, he's gone. And, of course,
We should.
American audiences says, "Yeah, he should. He should not have survived that fall." But American audiences want, something a little bit more hopeful, a little bit, more, tied up in a pretty bow, like you said. So they shot that ending, and there is some debate about whether the lead actor was even there, if it had to be a stand-in from far away, laying in the bed. Uh, it does leave it open for the second film, which, like I mentioned before, is just so much more, campy and fun and in a way absurd, and I mean that in the best way possible. Like, the moment Bride of Frankenstein starts, it's almost like it's like a completely different film. You're just in for something entirely new, but, I mean, the ending is pretty neat and tidy, but going back to what you said about Karloff, I don't know much about Karloff. I did recently listen to, a short, bio of his life and got more of an impression of where he came from and how, he ended up being hired for this, and then everything he physically had to bring into the role. And I just wanna highlight that what he does with such little dialogue is very special. It's in some ways like David Prowse playing Darth Vader. Unfortunately, he was dubbed over, but to be encased in that much, costume and makeup and weights and so uncomfortable and still bring across that childlike wonder, and also bringing a creature to the screen that no one had seen before. There's things about Frankenstein and Bela Lugosi's Dracula that we as modern audiences do not understand. People had never seen anything like that before, and people freaked out in the theater. Even Lugosi, who didn't have much makeup, just bringing that kind of theatrical evil into film was very overwhelming. And Karloff was able to do that, but also make him sympathetic. And there's an anecdote about him. I don't know if it's true or not, and I can't remember where I read it, so take it with a grain of salt, but they really worried about the child actress who was gonna play Mary. And they said, "Maybe she shouldn't see him on set," or like, "How are you gonna introduce her?" or anything like that. And she saw him right away and ran up to him and took his hand and asked if they could drive to set together, which I find really, really touching, and it's also an indication of who Boris Karloff was. I really do believe that children have a really good read on things and know if there's a shitty adult in their room. It's She was able to trust this person enough to do a scene like that and actually have him throw her into that pond over and over again that was real. Um, I think he was really
Oh God.
throwing her in that. And, to know that it was someone who did appear very scary, but she was able to do that and make a really important, I would say, like, yeah, it's a very pivotal scene. It's different from the murder of William in the book. It's an accident. That actually adds a whole bunch of, so much more pathos and identification with the creature because he doesn't mean to hurt anyone, and it just
Mhm.
dooms everything. So, as far as the ending, I think Karloff's performance is great. The ending, like, eh, but it opens it up for the sequel, and the sequel, we can't do without that. That's also, very important, so I'm fine with it.
No, the sequel is incredible. I agree with you. I mean, I think both, and maybe specifically the Bride of Frankenstein more than Frankenstein. I think it really captures the nihilism of that ending, of that choice so much better, where he recognizes, especially in Bride, after he has this chance where he thinks he's gonna find this life with this woman, does not work out with how the bride actually is, and he just feels that in that moment, that extreme emotion. I think that plays so much better than him on the boat in the ending of the book. um, I agree completely. I really think that's a change that like gets it in a way that like I don't connect with that in the book. I connect with that in the movie.
Yeah, yeah, I get that, and I think it's there's something to be said about the design by Jack Pierce, the makeup of the creature. Where you said, Hillary, like, and everyone was worried about the girl. She was gonna be scared by the creature, by Karloff. But I think there's nothing inherently scary to the design. Just like looking at the film, it's mostly the way people react to the
It's
creature that
uncanny. It's like, what is
scares.
that? Yeah.
Yes, yes. And to be honest, like to be fair, I mean, the introductory shot or like free shot where it just like
Yes.
quickly pop pop
Yeah,
pop goes up into him, and it's like the lighting, it's casting those dark shadows. You have the cheekbones and everything. It's an intentionally scary shot.
yeah,
But the fact that the child itself in the film doesn't react in by being afraid of him when she sees him. You have the old man later on. Like there's all those elements where I don't find it scary in the way that like Lugosi is charming as Dracula and seductive, and that's where the danger comes in and the fear. But with the monster, the creature of Frankenstein, most of the fear comes just from the way that people make him afraid and make him rageful, which is also something that's
yeah,
just present in the book. You mentioned mistakes and accidents that culminate in violence and terror, but the terror that's I think I should have written down the actual line, but there is a passage where it says like, if I cannot love if no one can love me, or that if I cannot love anyone, then people should just be afraid of me. It's just like this violent reaction towards a world that has rejected him in a way, which you don't necessarily see. Which I mean, it's funny because there's so many things that just have been cut, and now my mind is messing with all of them. But I think like there was way more violence in both versions of Frankenstein, like in the 31 and Bride of Frankenstein, and they had to cut it down the censors because there was too much killing, which is kind of funny. I mean, yeah, it does intentionally kill some people, which is fine. I don't mind the creature being violent in a way. I don't think we need it to be if anything, I'm more annoyed by making Victor borderline perfect. It's just like, oh, he got a bit too crazy for a second there, but it's fine. He's learned his ways, he's well past that. I think he's excessively simplified to the point
mm,
where I don't really feel that struggle internally of like, what have I done, what have come up with, like it's all my fault, it's all my problem. Like he says those things just like towards the end of both films essentially. But I don't know, and I do like Colin Clive. I think Colin Clive does the best he can. um, but it's a mixture of just a product of its time and lackluster screenwriting that it doesn't do him or Elizabeth or any pretty much any other character any favor.
One thing I wanted to address, and this relates not only to um, Bride of Frankenstein, but the novel itself, and these themes that we touched on earlier about rejection, is just about uh, his request for a mate, for a companion, a female. And while listening to this part of the book, I couldn't help but think to myself, it's a wonderful idea, but would it work? Because it's hard enough for people, just like the human species, to find a partner that will stay with them. It's like, and just like changing someone into a creature like him, would she even want to be around him or stay with him? And I know that Victor had reservations about them procreating, and I kept thinking like, "You're a doctor, just remove her uterus, then they can't procreate, like, problem
Can
solved."
he procreate? Can the creature?
I just don't
Is it
know. I
functioning?
mean, Yeah, like, it's addressed more in the Del Toro adaptation, which we'll get to. There's a conversation about, like, "Oh, you might, like, repopulate or something," and it's just like, I don't no, I don't think that's something to worry about at this point. You have bigger problems on your plate." But it did make me think about the isolation, especially of, like, younger men and middle-aged men now, where you've been promised the idea of a mate, especially among straight men, where it's like, this is the way things are supposed to be. You're supposed to have this companion. Why is society rejecting you for whatever reason? I know it's a lot more complicated than it is with the creature because it's a lot more plain, but I couldn't help but link those themes together, which once again proves, as Carson said, just how rich and the depths of this work and how it keeps relating to things that we're struggling with today, that we're still trying to parse out. And that was one thing in the book that I thought it's very universal, but it brings up that very important question, which is just like, well, if I had a girlfriend, everything would be better. And it's just like, I don't know. I don't think that's the way things work. And of course, in Bride of Frankenstein, it doesn't work. She sees him right away and it's a flat out no. And I wanted to mention this
Important.
earlier as far as interpretations of the creature. The most interesting one to me, although it's not um, accurate to the book, is Rory Kinnear's version of the creature in Penny Dreadful. And he
Yes.
asks for that. He asks, like, can I have a companion? And it's a 9-year spoiler. I think it ended in 2016. It's been a while since that
You
show
can
ended.
spoil it. You can spoil it.
But
It's
they
worth a watch for people who haven't
Oh,
seen it.
absolutely. Like, I rewatched an episode of it today to kind of prepare for this, and I thought, "Oh my god, I'm crying." And it's because of Rory Kinnear. Just absolutely underrated, very talented man, who plays the creature. And he really thinks and believes that if he has a girlfriend, it might help him. And this woman has a mind of her own and almost immediately is like, no, I don't owe you shit. I don't owe any of you men anything. And she does her own thing, which is probably, I mean, Mary Shelley was a pretty smart person. Maybe that's what she would have written as well. And it's interesting to see how that figures into the upcoming adaptation. So I'll just kind of leave that there. But it's something I had to address where it's just like we feel so lonely like the creature. And we just think like, well, if I had, it's just like that's not how it works. It can't be made for you. It's not gonna happen.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, I guess we'll get to it. I think Del Toro's version actually butchers this, and I think it's, to be clear, my favorite part of the book. You stole that from me, Nick. I was gonna say it was my favorite passage, and then you had to go talk about, like, oh my god, I love the passage where he asks for a mate. I was like, oh my god, stop. Um, I think it
So
is.
sorry.
It's okay. Um, I think Del Toro's version mucks it up a bit, but like really, what he's asking for is just like, if no one else on this world, like if society just accepted him and grew with him and gave him patience and gave him learning and time to learn. It's not the fact that he like needs a mate because there's none, but just like he literally has nobody else in the world. I just think that's a really poignant, like, again, reflection. Like, what I love about the 30s versions especially is how every single time it goes into an angle like that, what it really is doing is holding a mirror up to society. He's put in this position because society literally won't like look at him. They literally scream and run, and unless you're like a child or blind, you are monster-sized. You're ostracized for them. I just think it's a really poignant idea, and I think that begging for, I mean, I guess we're really talking now about like every other adaptation but the one we're actually talking about. But I think when the monster's begging for a mate, that desire from him just to have someone who can sit there and see him, it's when those years of isolation hit. I think that's really poignant. I love that part of the story.
Mm. I think one thing that I don't know if it's addressed in any of the ones that we've seen. Definitely not the James Whale version. The question I want to bring in, and I wonder if this is more of a female thing or something Shelley would have addressed. It's like, why would you condemn another person who you don't know to be cursed the same way that you are? I keep thinking like, this is just the moment. Like, for example, if I was Victor or something like this, like, I need a mate. And it's just like, humans are pretty terrible. You know what's great though? Dogs. Dogs don't care what you look like and they will love you forever. Like, the creature should have, like, yeah, the creature should have had like a puppy or something, something that's more forgiving than humans.
Well,
That's where my mind is going right now.
in the Del Toro
Yeah.
version, we know he's not a fan of dogs. We established that pretty heavily, I would say.
One thing that did surprise me, and this is just an aside, was when you watch the making, it was that they used real wolves. Like, that really stunned me that they had threw Jacob Elordi in there. It's like, "All right, and we're gonna do all these stunts," or maybe it wasn't Elordi or the stunt person, but it's just like, "We're gonna use actual wolves and then combine it with CG," and I thought, "That's bizarre. That's really weird. That seems really dangerous," but,
We'll
you
get
know,
to that. We'll get to that.
we'll get to it. I'm getting ahead
Um,
of myself.
no, but to address, and then we can actually transition into the 1994 film. I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts on that. But yeah, no, to finish with the companion, the idea of the companion. I find that I think it's almost like a simplistic view of life and slightly selfish what the creature
Oh.
does, which is yeah I feel understandable considering the experiences he has I keep changing between he and it. I apologize. The pronouns of the creature. What are the right pronouns?
We don't know their pronouns, so
I think that he I refer to it as a he. It was very strange, and once again, I'm getting ahead of myself, was that he's referred to as it in the latest one. That really bothered me.
Yeah, he, it, they use all the
They
pronouns.
maybe, I don't know, he, definitely a he in my mind,
um
but mm.
yeah, sorry, but yeah, I think it's a selfish act from someone who has earned to also think like that. It feels again, it's like you mentioned, it's begging. It's an act of desperation, and you do feel it as well in the Bride of Frankenstein. It's just that moment where you see it. It's in a way that it's not really present necessarily in the first one. It's just like, oh, people are afraid of him, and that's it. But there is just this emphasis on the look of the creature being what terrifies people and what makes them angry with him. It's like, oh, look at him, look at him. Just like always putting this emphasis on the looks, and to be rejected by his own bride, um, also who just screams in his face. It's brutal. I For a film that is so very funny in the beginning, it gets gradually darker and sadder until that just unflinching final passage, and it's yeah, great final 5 minutes. Again, Victor lives through it all for some reason. We gotta have him alive with Elizabeth, I guess. But yeah, good films. Absolutely, Bride of Frankenstein. But speaking of films that maybe are not so good, Hillary, I think it's time we talk about our boy Kenneth Branagh and what he cooked up in 1994.
Oh,
What are
this is
your thoughts
perfect.
on this film?
I just wanna say that, yeah, this is a perfect assignment because, to anyone listening, Nicola sent the notes. He said, "Carson should introduce the 1931 version because he loves it. Nicola, you're gonna introduce the Del Toro version because you love it." And then with me, I thought, "This is appropriate because I actually like Ken Branagh stuff, or some of it." I was raised, with, I think particularly Much Ado About Nothing and his Hamlet. Those were
Nice.
both, those are films that I own and enjoy very much. This film, this isn't the first time I've seen it. I'm thinking this is actually my 3rd time seeing it. I
I'm sorry.
I'm just dumbfounded by it. I'm just absolutely dumbfounded by this film. I don't know what went wrong. My notes for it are just a lot of why. Just why is this happening? Here I'll read some. I won't read all of them, but it's just like overacting and nonsensical editing. The acting makes me think of Calculon from Futurama. There's frantic camera movements, blaring musical score, no subtlety or character development, shirtlessness a lot. I mean, just it's almost like an incomprehensible thing. And kind of, going hand in hand with what we've been talking about so far is that this isn't, it's marketed as Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and I understand why, because it was supposed to be in conversation with Bram Stoker's Dracula, because it was associated with Coppola, and Coppola wasn't able to, contribute what he wanted to. In fact, I think he tried to get Branagh to edit things a little bit, and Branagh was like, "No, it's perfect." But it wasn't. It should have been called Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. That's what it should have been called, and there's no subtlety, everyone's shouting their lines, um, everything's incomprehensible, there's just a level of self-indulgence and narcissism, like, some of the worst examples of, like, an actor-director going way too far with indulging himself, and it pains me to say this because I this should not be an indication of Ken Branagh's work. He's made good films, but there's just something about this one, and I wrote down a theory. I said, "This is the first film he did without Emma Thompson," and I wrote down underneath it Bogdanovicism, which is Peter
Ah,
Bogdanovich's films were not that great once he cheated on his wife and kind of like cast her aside, then the quality of his films went down. Is that there are a lot of men who make incredible things, but we forget that there are wives, um, editors,
George Lucas is another
co-producers
one.
that keep them in check, and I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe she kept him in check. But this was obviously a learning experience for him because he has not made anything like this since. This must have been really humiliating for him. And I mean, in some ways, I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm beyond words. I need someone else to talk because this was just it was too much.
I
Everything is too much.
I could take this as well. Yeah, I think I because I'm looking at his career as a director. And this came out a year after Much Ado About Nothing, which was beloved, rightfully so. And right after he made In the Bleak Midwinter and Hamlet. And Hamlet is amazing. That's the first Hamlet adaptation I watched. We watched it in school, and I was the only one who liked it. Like then I was like, "Whoa!" Like
Same,
I think we watched
yeah.
it in chunks of 1 hour a day or something. And that was just like that's the best part of the day. All of my classmates hating on it. Um, but this feels like the byproduct of someone who just thinks too highly of himself and needs to be humbled. Um, I think there is something very funny about everyone else pretty much distancing themselves from this film. From the screenwriters, this was co-written by Frank Darabont, who said it's weird because I'm watching a movie that's pretty much what I wrote on the page, but it's in no way how it's supposed to be portrayed. It's an excellent example of just how much direction can change something. I don't like this film. This was my second time watching it. I really don't like it. I find it borderline painful to watch. It's so loud. It's like it's there's so much screaming, there's so much dancing, there's so much movement, things happening, things happening, things happening. Needless violence constantly. You mentioned it, needless shirtlessness. It's just like Kenneth Branagh really wanted to show he was working out. Okay, damn it. Um, and the thing that surprises me the most is that every time, like I did it the first time as well, I was looking at the cast going into it, and they see, you have Kenneth Branagh, you have Helena Bonham Carter, Ian Holm, John Cleese, Robert Hart, like a who's who of British royalty of the time, and then you see Robert De Niro as the creature. Or
Why?
there's what's the stupid name? It's a sharp featured man. Apologies,
Mm,
it's just so stupid. Um, and I every time I'm like, oh yeah, De Niro. Oh yeah, that's gonna be sucky. And actually, I don't know if it's a hot take. I think De Niro is the best part of this film. I think De Niro kind of gets it, gets the vibe of the creature, gets the violence right, but also the humanity, the hopelessness, the romance, the longing. The final moments with him are very nice. I think the interactions that he has, where he's controlling Victor, are strong, but everything else, I think Helena Bonham Carter, bless her, the worst Elizabeth, just like it's
yeah,
like
it's
Kenneth
not even her
Branagh broke like
fault.
they broke up by Kenneth Branagh and Emma Thompson because of Helena Bonham Carter, but you're not seeing any of that chemistry off screen on the screen. You know, um, yeah, it's and I just don't. I think it's a movie that partly does portray events that happen in the book. Sure, does it actually capture what Mary Shelley was saying? Not really. Carson, hot take, you love this film, right?
No, dude, this is the best one. I mean, it's not good, right? Like, there's been a lot said, and I pretty much agree with everything everyone has said. I will add the visual language of this film is like insane. There are times where it wants to be gothic. There are times where it's Sound of Music. Like, it's very odd when they have
Oh
the
yeah, they're
Sound of
running
Music
on the hill.
sequence
Yes.
on the
Yeah, I
hills.
thought
Yeah,
about that too. I was just like, is this Sound of Music now? Oh no, it's a
like
lightning experiment. Why?
The
Who
helicopter
cares?
shot.
Oh my
and it's
god.
so baffling because Hillary, you are so like 1,000% correct that Branagh is, I think, a great filmmaker. I'll go even further. I think overall, yes, he has misses. Don't get me wrong. I think he's really good. I cannot wait until 10 years when we do like our Summer of Shakespeare series and we can talk about all the Branagh films because I think, especially his Shakespeare adaptations, which he's in the middle of when he makes this film, are like number one really great, but I also think really strong specifically as adaptations. Here it's like it's like a different filmmaker. The adaptation is horrific. The film is horrific. I don't know why he chose to make it 7 hours long, or at least it feels like that, even though it's not. I guess that's what I'm told.
It was
It's
too
one of the
long.
most. It's one of the most boring films that just like I've ever seen. Maybe it really is like painful to sit through, and you keep waiting every time I go into this. I think this is my third time seeing it. I'm like, maybe this, like, you look at the elements and it's like, there has to be something more here. Branagh's good. The actors are pretty good. Like, there has to be some angle where everyone else is wrong and I'm going to see the genius here. And it's not genius. It is like fucking horrific. So, yeah, it's shocking. I do like the fact that they add the plague element. That's good. I think one of my biggest issues with Del Toro version, and we'll get there, is the fact that he just looks like a normal man and everyone shoots him and is like, what the fuck is that? Like, what's that in the forest? And they shoot him when it's just like a normal guy. Here, I like the fact that, like, oh my God, shun him. He's gross. He has the plague. I like that change. I don't
He
know
is
if anything
gross.
else here
He looks
really
gross.
connects. He does look gross.
But you
That's
could
true,
get
Nick.
used to him. That's I mean, all of these
Well,
guys,
I
but
typically
particularly
I
De
don't
Niro,
think.
it's like, yeah, it's a guy who's cut up, but like you could get used to looking at him. It's like it's obviously someone who's disfigured. So what, you
I think
know?
I've
But
seen this guy
they,
on the Berlin subway, just today. So
yeah.
Yeah. Let's also be clear. I just don't think if you're ugly, you should be shunned by society, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I do think I
Yeah.
don't know if just being like he's gross is good enough for me,
Let's
but
just
I do
kill it
like that.
immediately. It's just like, it's just the guy.
Nick is
Like,
like, well, he's ugly. We should come. I was like, well, I don't know what they're doing in Italy, but it's not my vibe. Um,
hopefully
yeah,
not. Hopefully not. I mean, Nick mentioned De Niro. I don't think De Niro does a bad job in this, but I do think it's just I look at him and it's just like, you shouldn't have done this. It should have been someone else. I don't know who.
yes,
It's just not it's not right, but he does what he can with the material. Personally, the only scene that I really thought was done well was Richard Briers as the blind man. And Briers is someone
yep.
who's shown up in a lot of Branagh films. One of those character actors that is just very dependable. You can give him whatever you've got, and he will bring the character to life and is quite wonderful. Um, it was just like this moment of subtlety, just like two actors actually acting, and having a dialogue with each other before it just becomes operatic and over the top again. The his kids come in and they're immediately like, "He's ugly, kill it, throw it out," and then De Niro loses it immediately and like burns it down and is like, "I will have my vengeance," and you're just like, "Everyone's shouting, stop shouting, use your inside voices." I mean, Niccolo brought up the Frank Darabont quote. I flagged that and I thought maybe I should read the entire thing that he wrote, but I think you summed it up very, very well. This is a very easy quote to find. It's in the Wikipedia article, and it's also shown up, or his name has shown up in interviews with Del Toro over the years, as far as him saying, like, I read that script, it was perfect, but it's ultimately not what was filmed. And it does make me wonder if this screenplay had ended up in Del Toro's hands or someone else who was working during the early 90s, what potential may have been there and what that film could have been. But instead, we got this, and it's incomprehensible. Like, I went down rabbit holes trying to figure out what happened to Henry. Some people said he was killed by the creature, and said no. Like, he's just on the screen, the stairs, those huge stairs with no railing, which is such a hazard, just screaming, and then we never see him again. It's just Ian Holm, like, all he does is shout, and then he dies inexplicably, like, in his bed. I guess it's because he saw the creature. I read an interpretation of that, and I was like, "What illustrated that connection?" I just it's baffling, and then, I mean, the plague, like Carson said, I think that does add an element of, like, realism to it as a there's, something in Del Toro's version that we'll get to where I thought, like, "This actually makes sense. This is an interesting addition to things." But the integration of making Elizabeth the bride, I do think there's a bit of cleverness in that as far as, like, adding a stakes or as far as, like, a real conflict near the end, but it's all resolved within one scene. Um, and
Hmm.
so over the top and just crazy, um, that, people criticized it. But one thing I did find, because I went down so many rabbit holes, I went to, like, old archives of, like, IMDb boards of
Gosh,
people
like you
putting
wanted to make
their
sense of this movie.
Yes, I wanted to I wanted to know what happened with Henry, and that just ended up I was, like, reading stuff that people thought about this film in 2006. There are people out there who love this film. They love it so much. They think it's, like, one talked about the love scene was, like, the best love scene they've ever seen, and for me, it was, like, I was so embarrassed. I was
Ouch.
uncomfortable. I was scared while watching it. I shouldn't be feeling these things. And some people are like, "This best love story of all time. This is the best adaptation. It's the most faithful adaptation." And I just thought, "What? Obviously, you haven't read the book." So there are
I
people
mean,
out
the
there who
most
do love it.
faithful, probably like shallow, like superficially, I guess it's the most faithful adaptation.
Um, One
Sure.
thing that
Justine
came
is
up
here. She gets hanged.
that's true, and
Character we barely
that's a
see.
pretty horrific but unrealistic scene. Um, One thing I kept encountering in these really old conversations was a reference to a 2004 Hallmark TV movie version of Frankenstein. Multiple people have seen this and they say, "This is the most accurate version I've ever seen." It might be out of date today because these conversations happened, 20 years ago, but it did make me curious about that as far as maybe seeing it, I don't know. I did see a preview for it, and it does look like a TV movie, so it might be, taking a hit as far as, like, production value or costuming and makeup, but it was interesting to hear from people consistently saying, like, "I know no one watched this, and it's a Hallmark movie, but it actually followed the book."
It's the one
So I'm
starring
putting
William
that out there.
Hurt.
Yeah, William Hurt is in it, and Donald Sutherland, and someone named
Julie
I think it's
Delpy.
Luke I think it's Luke Goss plays the creature, never heard of him. He does look like the creature in the book in the preview I saw, so
Oh, Luke Goss, yeah. He was in some
he
of
does.
Del Toro's films. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, or, like the creature in Penny Dreadful, just long dark hair and pale skin and looks strange. Looks like the first goth kid because he kinda was.
um, yeah, like I do agree that the addition of the bride element is compelling enough to have in this film, but also because I think it's one of those things that it's 1994, right? It's been 63 years, 59 years since Bride of Frankenstein came out, 65, 64 since the original by Whale. Like, it's such a strong part of pop culture and film culture that I think it's almost expected to have the bride element in some way when they're writing the screenplay. So I get why they do it. I don't know. Like, I want to like that scene. I think there's something about the makeup that they put on Helena Bonham Carter that's just weird. It's not like they try to make her just like the creature with the like completely bald, and which is also something that they do like in the novel, and like one of the adaptation does it just like having um the creature like grow hair over the years and become like this like shoddy clothing and just looking a bit like a bum in a way. But I don't know, there is a cool fire effect when she burns herself alive. I get the sentiment behind it. Kind of goes back to what you were saying though, Carson, of just like this nihilistic, like I cannot live in this world, suicidal intent that is very sudden with her. I don't necessarily like it. I don't really like the constant back and forth that they're doing inside the house. It's like they're here, they're going out, the kid is dead, the creature is inside, she's dead, and all of the deaths are a bit weird um, in here, which is shocking if you think, like, even the sets. You mentioned the stupid stairs without the railing. Just like it's something that I don't know. I feel like Coppola's version of Dracula is such a lightning in a bottle movie that could have gone so wrong in so many ways and instead kind of works despite all the craziness around it. I think this is what happens when you don't, like, when it just doesn't work. Where you have, like, we're gonna make a bold film, it's just gonna be big. In one part, we're gonna have these sets that remind you of German Expressionism. In another, we're gonna have Kenneth Branagh on top of a mountain in the Alps. And it's just like big, loud, too loud, isn't really saying anything of worth. And I don't want to say it feels disrespectful to the source material. It's not disrespecting, it is trying to be faithful. I can appreciate that they have the whole Arctic segment that begins and captains the film. I do like conceptually the ending of the film. I think it's very, again, very loud. It cannot just be, the creature is there, picks up the body of Victor, and just, we're gonna go away through the through the window of the boat. No, it has to be that they're gonna do the funeral pyre, but the ice is breaking. Oh God, the creature is swimming with the torch, has to burn himself and Victor alive. I mean, sure, it's a film, big budget from the 1990s. It feels like it has to have those elements, but yeah, I'm
Mm.
I'm happy for people who do like this version. I know a
I mean,
couple.
to each
Maybe if
their
you're
own. I
listening,
mean,
hi.
yeah, I'm sorry if we just, totally slagged one of your favorite films, but you mentioned Dracula when we did an episode about that. Was it? I can't remember which podcast it was. Was it
I think
this one?
Clappercast maybe a year ago, over a
Okay,
year ago
or
actually,
I
like
knew it was
summer.
Clappercast or this one, but the way I see that film is like it's a horny fever dream. Like it's extremely horny. And I think that that's what this tries to be a little bit at some points as well. There's even some scenes that are like they're attempting to edit them or shoot them the same way as Coppola and like you said it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It's a shame. And it's yeah, the score is so loud. I mean, he does that in a
So
lot of his
generic.
movies, even his good ones, but this one in particular was like, "Turn the music off, please."
Patrick Doyle. Yeah, 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 yeah. And I think, like, the last statement I'll make. I don't know if Carson has anything he wants to add, but just, this should be Kenneth Branagh's Frankenstein. This shouldn't be Mary Shelley's
No,
Frankenstein. I do like the idea, just like picturing like Mary Shelley watching this film, be like, oh gosh,
dying of a heart
yeah,
attack because it's just so overwhelming.
it's too loud for her. Okay, too much excitement that never slows down. You need people to just, take it in and breathe a little. I hate
Oh,
the
man.
laboratory as well. I hate the laboratory in this. It sucks.
With the
Um,
eels?
The eels
Come
was an
oh,
on.
interesting idea, but I kinda know what Nick's talking about. I mean, I just hate moments in this film, like, when Williams brought in, I just can't imagine walking up to Sir Ian Holm. I can't, and being like, "Run across the lawn," and just scream, "No!" Like, where is this direction coming from? Like, all of the direction is just, like, shout everything. I don't It's just beyond me, like, it got to the point where I thought, like, I don't he never had drug issues, like, was he on something when he did this, or was he just so in love with Helena Bonham Carter, like, he was just high on life, or I just don't know why he made the decisions he made, it's just crazy. All of it's crazy.
I'm glad he got better. He improved. He learned from his mistakes, and he ended up becoming a better director. Speaking of better directors, we have one more adaptation to get into because, of course, just recently released on Netflix and limited theaters. Thankfully, I managed to watch this in theaters twice. Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein, a passion project of his for decades. He was obsessed with James Whale's film. He watched it Sunday after Mass with the family in a small cinema, and he became obsessed. He also watched the film Spirit of the Beehive, which kind of tackles into the fascination of a little kid with this film, and he has been trying to make it his own for a long, long time. He read Mary Shelley's book later in life when he was a late teen, I want to say 18 or 19. And he realized, like, oh, there's so many, like, this is not at all the movie I've seen, the movie that I've grown to love. It's a completely different thing. How would I adapt this? How would I make this into a movie? And so, of course, there have been elements of Frankenstein throughout his entire career. Even in like Kronos has it, Blade 2 has it, Hellboy, this fatherhood, um, children who don't belong in this world, misfits, creatures. They've always been recurring in his filmography, and finally, he has been able to make it with Oscar Isaac playing Victor Frankenstein, beautiful, slender, tall Jacob Elordi playing the creature, Mia Goth, Christoph Waltz, and other familiar faces rounding out the cast. I love this film. In a way that I was not expecting, because this movie premiered in Venice. I did not see it there, but everyone that I knew who watched it wasn't a fan. David Carson here will go next. I know he was not a fan. Multiple people they follow were lukewarm to this film at best. And I do love Del Toro. I've been watching his movies regularly now since Pacific Rim. We're talking 2013. Crimson Peak in the cinema was just a foundational experience for me. 10 years ago, almost to the day at this point, it was like October, November 2015. And they really connect with him and they really love him. I've spoken to him a couple of times very briefly, and it just is such a passionate artist, and he loves cinema and he loves art and he loves storytelling, that he always has me engaged and enraptured in what he makes. Even though I was a little bit let down by Nightmare Alley, it wasn't my favorite. I should rewatch it. Pinocchio I thought was terrific, but this film I went in cautious. I went in a little afraid. I was like, oh gosh, what am I gonna get myself into? And I was swept up by it. And especially rewatching it the second time, I really love this film. And it's interesting if because we're talking about adaptations, is it the most faithful? On a purely narrative level, no, but it is that by design. But what it does manage to capture, I think, is many of the elements that Mary Shelley is talking about. The Christian symbolism, which was completely abandoned by the other two adaptation we discussed. So many little scenes that have not been portrayed before, they are present here. But I do think he captures the soul of what Shelley wrote, um, while also updating it in his own Del Toro way. And again, he's not shying away from saying it's his version. He's not pretending to it to be um, a perfect adaptation. So I'm curious what the two of you think about this film. Carson, you had the pleasure of going to a lovely event by Netflix. You got a nice movie tie-in version of
I
the book.
did. Yeah, I mean, no one can claim I didn't give this a chance. I went to Netflix's private theater on the lot, had to get security clearance. Like this, I
They wanted to
might
buy
not have
you
seen it
out.
on the biggest screen. Yeah, they gave steak tartare. Like they not only try to butter us up, but like they said, this is the quality of screen. Like this is the theatrical experience we feel confident enough in to present this film to you. So I gave it the best chance Netflix could have ever wanted to give me, I guess. Um, it's horrible. Like, here's the thing. So I don't like Del Toro. I think as a writer, especially Del Toro, especially when he's adapting, is very lackluster for me. On Clappercast, we did Shape of Water a couple years back. Really dislike that film. I do think Patrick McHale's Pinocchio is fantastic. I will give you that for sure. But again, co-writer, co-director. When it comes to, I think Nightmare Alley is terrible. I think Nightmare Alley is also terrible as an adaptation, specifically from the original feature it's being based on. I don't think he has the goods when it comes to writing. Now, typically his visuals are impressive. I really like the guy on a personal level. I think he loves cinema. I think again he creates really strong visual artistry, but I don't think his storytelling, his writing has ever been his strong suit, and I don't think it is continued here. I think the film is awful. I mean, I think it's paced horrifically. I don't understand why it drags its feet for so long at the start, and then when it actually, it's like a production that halfway through realizes like, oh, we're almost out of film. Just go. We got to get through the rest of it. It runs through its most emotionally poignant moments so quickly. I don't think it builds well. I don't think the performances are particularly strong. And I think, I mean, we'll definitely get into the writing more. But I think for me, what stuck out also is just like, I think it looks horrible. I mean, the costumes are good. There are elements of production design that are good, but the visual effects look like Netflix slop. It looks horrific. I genuinely would recommend watch this at home on a small screen so you don't have the visual effects blown up for you. I think the actual design of like the castle, for example, looks horrible. It looks like AI at times, I would even say, where it just does not look like it has a creative voice behind it. Unlike every other Guillermo del Toro film, even the ones I dislike, you could instantly picture these great sets and this wonderful texture. I don't think that's here at all. I think it looks really bad. So I we'll get into it. I think this is like horrible. But Hillary, I hope you're more positive than I am.
Um, that was a lot. Um, I was going through my notes to see what overlaps and what doesn't. I think that I am more what Nicola described earlier, which is lukewarm about this film. I went into it blind. I think I do understand now that this is Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein. Once again, it is not Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. The main themes that he's trying to tackle, as Nicola mentioned, is I think particularly father-son relationships. I ended up reading interviews not only with Del Toro, but also Isaac and Elordi talking about how making this film affected the relationships they had with their fathers. In some cases, opening up conversations and maybe um, improving their relationship with them or just making peace with a father who has passed, um, which isn't necessarily the crux of the book. I think the book is questioning other things, although there is, somewhat of a father-son relationship between Victor and the creature. The other thing I did not expect about this movie is, I mean, and I feel like I'm going to say something really not classy, but it is about monster fucking. I recently had to explain that concept to my mother. I said, like, there's some women out there who really want to fuck monsters, and I'm not one of them. So I feel really alienated sometimes, coming across like fiction that addresses this kind of thing. Another thing I
Certain
found
shape
out
of
that I'm
water is not your thing, right?
here's the thing. I don't want to I don't identify with her, but the difference between The Shape of Water and this one, and this is once again, this is something that links to me. So whether you agree with me or not, that's totally fine. When it comes to anything that has to do with eroticism, sexual attraction, romance, and that sort of thing. What's interesting to me as a viewer is things that are instantaneous. You put two attractive people together who have no foundation for a relationship, and they immediately are sexually attracted to one another, or they immediately want to bone, however you want to put it. That to me is just not interesting. Physical attraction's not enough. To me, it's very interesting as a viewer to get to that moment of discovery from one character or another where it's either like them finding out that they do have feelings for someone else and what they're going to do with them. And The Shape of Water does have that moment. It doesn't flat out start that way. Like the second she sees this creature, she thinks, I am sexually attracted to this creature and I want to, have sex with it. It's something that happens very suddenly. And if I remember the scene, I think she immediately runs away, like, I don't know what's going on with me or why am I having this impulse. But um the love story that they try to weave into this between this iteration of Elizabeth is entirely different. And I found it very hard to buy. And I think the main issue I had with this adaptation, putting aside things about it which I think are great, I think that the production design is beautiful. What they did what they could with the cinematography as far as it being very lavish and very detailed. All of that is there, which is what is expected of Del Toro at this point. But there's a difference in stakes. One of the things that makes the novel so tragic is that here is someone who does seem to be more well adjusted in the book, at least compared to the Ken Branagh and Oscar Isaac's version of Victor Frankenstein. It seems to be someone who's more headstrong and passionate and wants to do good in the world by evading death. Like, that's the impression I have of the book character. And he loves his father. He has a great relationship with his father. He loves his brothers. His relationship with Elizabeth is healthy. He has a friend, Henry. There's proof that Victor has a friend, that he can maintain a relationship. In this version of the story, all of that is taken away. Instead, he has like an antagonistic relationship with his father. He has a rather kind of cold, strained relationship with his mother, who's also played by Mia Goth, which I had trouble with, where I was like, are you trying to say that like down the line he wants to fuck his mom? Like, it's just, I couldn't quite wrap my head around that. He has a brother he doesn't care about at all. Um, Poor William is in a lot of scenes being ignored or walked past or left in the background. I felt bad for the guy. Um, he doesn't have any friends. He's constantly at odds with people and thinking he's smarter than them. And then, of course, how he treats the creature. There isn't that immediate rejection, which I found this might be interesting. If they go down this route where he's actually glad, like, he's like, oh, I actually created life. Let's see what I can do with this. But he becomes abusive and impatient, and um, his treatment of the creature um, deteriorates so quickly. It's very hard to like this man. It's very hard to understand this man. You don't root for the romance with Elizabeth. You can't get a read on her. He stalks her. He gets into the confession booth with her, which was ripped out of The Mask of Zorro. I was like, this is a scene from The Mask of Zorro. I'm just so confused right now. Um, it's really hard to invest in Victor, and I think further down we'll talk more about the the creature because he just doesn't have anything to root for, and I feel horrible saying this. I'm so glad that I watched this alone. This is a slight spoiler, but the scene where he gets
Spoil
blown
away,
away,
spoil away.
spoiler away, when he gets blown away and damages his leg, I laughed so hard. I haven't had like I was just it was like a relief, like a pressure valve for me being released when I saw his leg was mangled, and then I think I like pointed at the screen and I was like, "You deserve this." Like immediately. I was just like, "You son of a bitch." Yeah, of course, like, yeah, you lost your leg and now you're crying over it or whatever, but you're a horrible human being, and I don't think I should be feeling this way about the character, but that's Del Toro's intent. He talked about that he wanted him to be the antagonist, and I think that's not what I signed up for.
That's an interesting point, actually. I think we can focus more on Victor. I think that's something that the film itself does as well, right? It starts off with with a prologue, and then it goes into part one, Victor's tale, before transitioning in the last hour into the creature's tale. And with Victor, I think this is something that I don't want to say I was missing it in the other adaptations, but I don't. I think I said it before as well. Like I don't find the Victor in the book to be particularly likable. He's very much a male protagonist and a male character of a different era where they just had different expectations or needs for characters to be in a specific way, especially coming from Shelley's background. So to actually have Oscar Isaac go into this, I think they mentioned they had rock stars personas as a reference point to be like larger than life, very loud, very boisterous, but also unable to maintain those contacts, very reserved, very very annoying, you could say. I found him to be quite fun to follow. I think I actually really liked the childhood, the way that they portrayed it. I think Charles Dance as the father. I mean, it feels like he's just doing the same role every single time in every
Exactly.
movie he's in for the past 10, 20 years, but he does it well. ever since Game of Thrones. But I found that the entire part to be very outside of just looking great, but there is this interesting way that Del Toro deviates from the backstory of the Shelley Victor by painting him as this, yes, like he wants to conquer death because his mother was not able to survive. He was very attached to her. Um, and yeah, the entire sequence where you're properly introduced to older adult Victor Frankenstein, where he's in the auditorium in the school, medical school, and just showing and there's the animatronic puppet and throwing the ball around. Like it's a performance, and it's so I don't know. I think he became for me the type of character I love to hate. Just someone I would never relate to in real life, but just seeing him on screen and the way he's ambitious, he wants to get things done, and he goes about it in very unorthodox ways, to say the least. He's manipulative. He treats everyone around him poorly. I like that. I was like, okay, yeah, like it fits also with everything that Del Toro has done in his career. He has always been someone who loves monsters and hates humans, right? They're always the main villains of the film. It's never the creature itself that is the ultimate culprit of anything. So by having Victor be this gray, morally gray, leaning more towards the black, I think it lends to some playfulness and inventiveness in how he wants to tackle the first part of the story. Like I like how they changed Elizabeth. I think it's the best Elizabeth Mia Goth, which is a low bar to have because Elizabeth in most adaptations is worthless. I like that she speaks up her own mind. Like I don't want to be cynical. I could say like, oh, it's a classic, type of character you get nowadays. You need the woman who's a bit stronger and minded and speaks up. But I found her to be better than I expected, more likable than I expected. I like that she's someone who is a bit kooky, a bit unlike everyone else. She's probably closer to who Mary Shelley was as a young woman, more so than other women of that time. Fascinated with death and insects and this idea of rebirth. And so even the connection that she ends up having with the creature, which I don't find romantic initially. It's just more. It looks like something that's more out of curiosity and fascination because she's fascinated by peculiar things. The love comes out in a way that I want to say is love, platonic love more so than romantic love, maybe from the creature. Um, but there is something I don't know the way, and Del Toro has done it in Shape of Water and so many other movies. It really makes me emotional every time he has those scenes of just pure humanity and connection in those like dark stories. There's grimy violence. It's like I love how pulpy the violence can get and a bit exaggerated. But then when it slows down, and it always slows down, and I love that about him. He has those moments of tenderness and of connection and touch and gentleness, and that's when it really warms my heart. There are like multiple parts. I've seen this movie 3 times. I rewatched it when it came out on Netflix. There are still some parts that make me a little bit teary eyed. I don't know why. Just like there's something just so warm about it that I love.
See, I like. I'll be positive even on the film for a second. I think some of the choices they make in changing the beginning of this film and Victor's character, I actually like. I kind of disagree with you guys where I think the film is very intentional. I think making Victor quite empathetic in a lot of ways. This is obviously going deeper into generational
Mhm.
trauma and like what it means to be a father. And you see how like throughout as a kid, he just wanted this validation. Then his mom dies. So yes, he maybe does actions that are wrong, but even as he's rejected by science at the time, like I think they position him to be very empathetic and sympathetic, I guess, rather.
Yeah.
The issue is I think he comes off as very unlikable, and I don't think anything goes anywhere with it. But I actually like those changes. I like the choice that Mia Goth plays these two characters. I am fascinated. She initially said she was supposed to play 3 characters. I have no idea what that third character would have been. But she plays the 2 in here, and I think
The
that's
angel.
clever enough. Yeah, maybe the angel. That's a good shout. Because I like unless they wanted to include the little girl and make that a scene, I was like, I don't know where she would possibly fit in. Um, but as far as like, I think that story, I think those are good enough ideas. I think the issue really is the execution. I think number one, Victor again, and I think a lot of this is Oscar Isaac, just is so unlikable by the end of this and throughout of what he does, trying to build that sympathy. And I think this is a big issue with the film overall, is it like it wants to have its cake and eat it too, where it wants to create these really sympathetic characters in this tragedy, but at the same time it builds them to be these creatures of darkness, and both are at warring. They never can go full venomous. Any character in this film cannot go full venomous, because you must have that sympathetic element, because Del Toro, views these monsters as complex beings, whether you're looking at the humans in the film or the actual creature himself. But at the same exact time, and even society at the time, or how they portray society, you have to have that sympathy, so you can't go full venomous. But at the same time, it feels like he's wants it to be dark, so you never can, like, it constantly poisons its own sympathy. It's a very weird film, I think, when it projects morals. I also think the story itself, just like, I think a lot of the moments, as you mentioned, with this character developing, I think there is a story you could tell here about, like, this character, when met with harshness, met with brutality from this guy, he doesn't grow, he doesn't blossom. But when this woman treats him with kindness and gives him patience and time, he does grow, he does blossom. But then, like, Victor's frustration, and they portray this again, this is where, like, Victor cannot be too venomous. They portray his, like, anger as being anger around how long it's taking the creature to develop, and you get the sense of, like, oh, for weeks he's tried with this monster but he's not had development, so he's angry at that. But at the same time, then we see the creature just, like, magically learn how to speak, and it just, for me, it never adds up, and it never feels like the film fully knows what it wants to do with its character. And I think, to Hillary's credit, I think what she said about this being Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein is true, where this is clearly not a adaptation of the book specifically, right? Like, there's elements from the book, a lot of elements from the book, but he's doing his own thing with this. I think you get really caught in a trap, and I've seen a lot of filmmakers do this recently. If you're going to adapt a book and make it different, just make it different. Don't, like, carry this around. Don't carry your source material around like it's like a ball and chain on your ankle, where you have to fit in these quotes, you have to fit in the dialogue, you have to fit in these elements. Because if you're changing certain elements of the equation, the result's going to be different. So I just feel like it's really frustrating with some filmmakers, where they're like, no, I want this to be faithful to the book, but I'm actually going to change a lot about it, because then you're not changing things that need to also adapt. I don't know. I find that very frustrating with adaptations recently.
I think it speaks to what's an adaptation supposed to be. I think it's something that has come up multiple times actually doing this podcast. Sometimes with you, sometimes with other guests as well. Just like, how can you adapt? Like, not even how, just like, why should you adapt something? And therefore, what are you supposed to do about it? Like, how do you adapt it? And we've had instances where someone basically takes the source novel and just like one to one adapts it to the point of using the same dialogue. Even there have been some instances. There are people who take it as a jumping off point and go create wildly different stories, but still, who carry the original source's name and actually surpass it in some ways. I think it's a testament to what Mary Shelley wrote, that it's such a complex book in terms of all of the themes that it tackles. We didn't even mention really the whole fear, because it does come across as more fear than fascination with technological advancement and science and the way things are going. It's almost a cautionary tale of just how far are we pushing what we know and into the unknown. With it's fun to go and like think about these three different adaptations and how every director and every studio approached it in a different way, in a different manner. Ultimately, it's always the same story, but it's always told in different ways, and everyone finds something different that they connect to with the source material. I don't see that necessarily as a bad thing. Like, I don't even know. I'm even wondering what would be the worth of someone doing a straight adaptation of Shelley's Frankenstein, and what would that look like? Could that look better than the Kenneth Branagh version? Like, what would be? I don't want to say what would be the point of it. Like, I would like to find someone who actually is so passionate about the book that they want to make it one to one. Because if I'm thinking of the great adaptations we've talked about, and we've also mentioned some of them today, like I would say Coppola's Dracula is probably the best Dracula adaptation. Wildly different than the book in many ways, also faithful in others. but it does come from a different place, a place of horniness primarily, but different place nonetheless to why actually tackle it. And that's something that I really connected with Del Toro's, because you can tell he's been thinking, maybe overthinking about this, to be honest. Even though I do love the film, I don't want to say it's a perfect film. I've not given it 5 stars yet. Yet, emphasis on the yet. But I do think there are some parts that are a bit weird. Kind of made me like Hillary. You mentioned the laughing out loud with the leg and the explosion. I think it's like nice comeuppance for him. It's the least that could have happened in that moment in time. Also, just a bit of like Del Toro gruesomeness. That's just like very few people would have, a blast like that. Actually, have someone's leg be ripped off. But one part that felt weird to me is when we're introduced to the creature, and then I think we can talk about the lore. It's just creature comes into the cabin. He's like, I want him. It's like, he told me everything about you. I told you a tale. Let me tell you mine. It's just like, okay. I guess he's just gonna talk now, and people are gonna let him talk right now. Okay, sure. Like, there are a couple of instances of that just feel slightly weird. But again, like it's something that I had more of an issue of the first time around. Rewatching it, knowing those parts were gonna come, they didn't bother me as much. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I'm curious to hear, Hillary, how you feel about. I mean, I don't know if you have statements, comments towards what I just said. Otherwise, I'd also be curious to know how you feel about Elordi in this role, or maybe even generally. How do you feel about Elordi?
I'm glad you asked because I noted this in my letterbox review. I've never seen Jacob Elordi in anything, and I am aware of the conversation around him, which reminds me a lot of the conversation around Alexander Skarsgård 10, 15 years ago. People don't talk about him like he's a person. They talk about him like he's a fetish object, a dildo, like
Yeah.
yeah, like just something that people a thing that people sexually fantasize about, and it makes them feel a lot of things in their pants. Now, for me, that's a little bit strange because I think of human beings in terms of human beings. This is a person who has thoughts and feelings and wants to have a career, but I've never seen
Someone
him
you
act
don't know.
before. Someone you don't know, just reminding people that parasocial relationships are a problem. And I felt the same way about Skarsgård too. I'd seen him in a few things, and a lot of people were talking to me about how hot he was, and I just couldn't help it. Whenever I'd look at him, I think there's a lot more going on here, and he's proven over time that that's the case. That
Yeah.
he is way more capable as a performer and what he is willing to do. He has a sense of fearlessness that I think people weren't aware that he has. He does not play things safe, and he also seems to be a good person in real life. I've heard anecdotes about him that have made me think like there's a reason why he's successful. It's because he's not a horrible human being and respects his coworkers. Elordi, I know a lot less about. So this is my first time seeing him, and I don't know whether that was a help or was a hindrance because I'm not necessarily seeing Elordi. I'm seeing Elordi make, I think, in some ways, a very smart decision to play someone who can't be judged on his looks in a sexual manner, unless you are, like I said before, a monster fucker. There's going to be some people who really think that Jacob Elordi is hot while he's looking like one of these. He reminded me of like the creature in Prometheus a little bit. There was other things that the makeup reminded me of. Um, I'm not entirely sure if he was up to the task. One of the things that Del Toro talked about as far as casting him is that he says, I cast him for his eyes, and I couldn't connect with him through the makeup through his to his eyes. And I don't want to fault him at all. Maybe I'll see him in more things and I'll realize he's a lot more capable of an actor or a certain type of character or playing things that is better suited to him than this. I ended up thinking about Nicholas Holt a lot. I don't think I'm not saying I'm a Nicholas Holt fan, but I just kept thinking about what would Nicholas Holt have done with this because he's the same size and he has those eyes. If he was the creature, I think a
Do
lot
you
of those.
remember? Sorry.
No, go for it. No.
Do you remember that Andrew Garfield was supposed to play him originally? He was cast. They were ready to go, and then he had to drop out due to scheduling conflict. I'm guessing maybe after the hunt. I don't know what happened there.
Really?
Good
Okay.
choice,
And
Andrew.
I want to say 1 week before they had to start shooting, they recast with Jacob Elordi, who basically like had 24 hours from a phone call to actually read the full
Yes.
script and say yes to the project. and then they had to remake, like they basically had Andrew Garfield makeup, and they were like, we have 1 week from now until principal photography with him starts to like try and make it work, something they've been working on for months. So it's
No, I
impressive
believe
it worked
that.
out as it did.
And I think they mentioned that in the behind the scenes. I think they said something like, yeah, it was a shortened timeline, like a few weeks doing the makeup test and everything, and then throwing him
Like they did
into
one
it.
test, right? I think that was
One
that's what they
test.
say in
And I
the
think they said
behind the
something like
scenes.
they did it 9 weeks before he was on set, which I thought that's very risky. Um, I they did talk a lot about his physicality and his grace, and of course what he brings as far like the idea. I think a lot of people in their mind like what the perfect male form looks like is very close to a lordy. What what people want men to look like. And I'm
They
speaking
do
about
want
this
tall men,
objectively.
I know.
A tall muscular man, but I don't know if he was the right choice for this. Um, if you're acting in prosthetics, it's incredibly hard. Like I mentioned before, it's very, 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 very difficult. Like with Karloff, the fact that he was able to do so much, and we talked about De Niro's performance. There was there were some shots of De Niro where I thought he must have gone through hell that day. I don't know how many hours he was in the makeup chair just to do this stuff. Um, and Elordi, I'm sure it was maybe a little bit easier because makeup has become more comfortable now, hopefully. But, it did leave me wanting. So I don't even know if I saw Elordi. I don't even know if I saw what he was capable of. Um, I can't think of you mentioned Andrew Garfield. That might have been very interesting, but that's not who I would have thought of either. I just he's a tough it's a tough character to cast. I don't know. I'm gonna throw that back to you guys. Like, is there someone you can think of in their current state now who would be interesting to see play a creature in an adaptation of this? I would
Timothy
not think of Jacob
Chalamet.
Elordi, I'd say.
I like Lordy though. I mean, I do. I think I like Lordy in general. Going from Euphoria to Oh Canada to this. I mean, I think he's an actor who I do think genuinely wants to be taken quite seriously and really wants to do this right and like have a career not based off just looks. The biggest issue for him and every single filmmaker who's worked with him, and if you go in an interview and hear them talk about him, it's the same story where they're like, he's great, he's just fucking tall. He's like 6'5", which really, I mean, according to Schrader at least, really limits what you can do with him. So I think a performance like this, where he can really use that physicality and use his size, is perfect for him. I think the issue for me with this film is like he's given some really great material, but it's oftentimes feels very rushed. I think the ending, and we'll get into the ending, like fails just due to the timing of it. So it's hard for me to pick another actor, but I think like Elordi does well. I think the screenplay does him no favors. As far as someone else, yeah, Timothy Chalamet, I think would genuinely be interesting. I think just someone on the other spectrum. I guess we've seen from literally, I mean, the beginning, these huge, imposing figures as Frankenstein. I would be curious what a smaller Frankenstein would read like. I think that's an interesting change in the formula if you do something with that physicality. And I think looking at his performance in The King, like I do think he can command a scene. So I genuinely think Timmy would be interesting.
Yeah, I also think I think the Frankenstein creature can feel like borderline stunt casting.
Mm.
Because there's something about Boris Karloff where he just transformed himself into that, but he wasn't a household name in the way that either De Niro nor even Lordi, to be honest, are actually. But it feels like one of those things I would rather like. I don't know who I would like, and probably I would like an unknown or someone who's not that big, who's just like right for the role to be casting it. Because that's even what I remember from people going to the Venice premiere. It was like, oh, I'm gonna see a Lordi play the creature. It's like, just like again, it's like you said, Hillary. It's like the fetishization of him, and just because he's famous and attractive and people like him, it's like if they put fucking Harry Styles, to be honest, like what would be the difference? It's like, oh my god, it's the famous actor we love and singer is gonna do the thing.
Yeah, it's my
I,
thirst watch. I mean, with Isaac too, Isaac has also been fetishized over the years. I'm always very uncomfortable about conversations around actors like that, and you see a lot of that on Letterboxd.
oh, Pedro
Sometimes
Pascal is the other one now.
just really
Constantly.
uncomfortable shit. Like their review is like, "I wish he would strangle me with my father's tie and step on me," and it's just like, that's for your journal. That's not for Letterboxd. Keep those
Mm.
thoughts to yourself, you know.
I really
So
liked
it's
Harris Dickinson's comments. I don't know if you saw them. Maybe Carson
no, what
did.
were they?
But Harris Dickinson spoke. I don't know what event it was, but I just saw the video of it. Where he was talking about how people went really mad for Baby Girl, and like
Mhm.
those comments that you would read on letterboxds that are already uncomfortable letterbox, he received in real life by some women and other people,
Yeah.
just like going
Mhm.
up to him and saying those things that he found really uncomfortable, rightfully so. But yeah,
No,
it's
it's not
good that
appropriate
we're
whatsoever.
acknowledging it. I think we spend so much time, understandably and rightfully so. It's been centuries of full on female objectification. I'm not a fan of. I've spoken to some female friends who are like, "Oh, it's fun to objectify men." It's like it's not fun to objectify anyone. Like,
No, no. I
maybe
get
we should
kind of
just
like
not do this.
mad.
Okay, it's fine, or
Yeah,
you keep it
don't
for yourself. Just
don't tweet at them, don't go in their DMs, don't walk up to them on the street, especially if they're with their girlfriend and their families, like, just don't.
oh no, it's
It's
twisted.
it's
Find
just yeah, don't
like-minded
do that.
individuals, have a nice conversation with them about it,
Yes.
and
I
then
guess, yeah,
go
get it out
on
of your
with your
system in a
life.
healthy way, I suppose, but, um,
Consent.
yeah, it's important, and, it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I mean, as far as answering my own question, I can't really come up with something. I did mention Rory Kinnear earlier, which I think worked, on
Yep.
Penny Dreadful because a lot of people weren't aware of who he was, and he's someone who I think spends a lot more time acting in the theater, although, he has appeared in more films since, playing the creature, where it's just someone's like, "I don't know this person. Who is this?"
Hmm.
I think that you bring up a really good point that you should keep your options open if you are going to cast someone like this where there isn't that baggage with them. And I feel like with Alordi where he is right now, there is a lot of baggage, um, for
I mean, we
considering
didn't
what's
even
expected of
mention
him.
that actually, which is a very good point, which is super cute in the 1941 Frankenstein. It's just like they have the cast in the beginning of the movie for the monster is just like a question mark. It's
That's
not
such good
Boris Karloff. It's
marketing.
just question mark. It's like, oh my
I
god,
love it.
the monster who's gonna play him? It's
We
it's
don't
so
know.
clever. I don't know, and it adds to the suspense and the terror and everything around it, like going into the film. Well, here I will say I actually really like Jacob Elordi in this. I don't know if I would go as far as others and say like it's an Oscar worthy performance, but I did really like what he did with everything, even though I hate, but there's no way to go about it, but I just hate the reveal. There's something when he's just pulling down the bandages and just like this, like the perfect chin. It's like, oh, like you don't hear people in the audience going, oh, it's just like, oh, it's like,
He
oh, it's
is
so
more
pretty.
childlike and smoothly
Yes.
put together, and I know to a certain degree that was an artistic choice because if you're gonna have someone with their clothes off for a long time, you need to have a seamlessness with the makeup and, a
Yes.
lightness to it, otherwise it's just not gonna work. Well,
And
one thing oh, yeah, I mentioned this before. What I
yeah,
did like them bringing into the story was that they harvested the body parts from soldiers. I thought that's a very interesting angle on things rather than, criminals.
I did look around for it. Because it's they changed the setting from 18. No, was it like late 18th century,
It
like
was like
early
it's
19th
I
century?
wrote down my first note was like, "Why did they set this 60 years later?" Because I think it's 1797 in the novel, at least, like,
Hmm.
the captain's letters are
Yeah,
1797,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and it's 1857, and I thought, "Why did Del Toro choose 60 years later? That's so random," but I guess it's because
I
of the
think it's to
war?
justify the advancements of science to actually have and like have some of the science that they portray here people more believable. But I do like that they actually set this during essentially I was looking at like wars and things that happen. It's probably the Crimean War, considering the
Mhm.
clothing they also have. And there is a funny quote that I like from Christoph Waltz where it's like where they're going into the giant water plant uh place, like where they're gonna build the Frankenstein's castle essentially. Let's simplify it as that, the laboratory. And I do like that it's like, oh yeah, this was abandoned from the last war or the one before that, just one of those wars. It's like, yeah, there were a shit ton of like there were so many deaths throughout the entirety of the 18th and 19th century in Europe and Russia. with so many multiple conflicts. And yeah, I was looking up. I was like, what's conflicts probably gonna be this one, because it's like, yeah, 55, 57 starting point. Crimean War,
Yeah.
most
I think
likely.
it's in the Wikipedia article. They directly
Ah, there
say
you go.
it's bodies from the Crimean War, but I don't know who decided that or if that's been verified. The other
It's
element of the
like
story.
production design, I imagine, maybe.
Oh yeah, they had to choose something, but bringing Waltz into the picture, Waltz's character doesn't really exist in other iterations, and the reveal that his long game is that he wants his consciousness put into the creature. I thought, "Ooh, you probably should have led with that because you're too far now, and Isaac is too, just like temperamentally, if you're working with that person, he is someone who is in complete control of the situation and is not afraid to say no." Um, so he really overplayed his hand there. And that big hole in the laboratory, like the second I saw that, I thought, oh, that's not good. That's going to go somewhere. And Waltz just goes right through that hole. Very great
Ooh,
production design, but just seeing it was a spoiler. I thought something horrible is going to happen with that hole. It's all tile and slippery in a Del Toro film where everything's wet. Mm-mm. Things didn't go well for him.
he loves head injuries as well. Every movie's gotta have some weird head injury. And here, that's a
Yeah.
nasty one.
One thing
Even the whole,
I
I
did
really
have
like the
to
montage as well. That was fun.
the montage is like, I wonder about whether this is because I come from my both of my parents work in medicine, but like all of like the visceration and dissections and things like that, it doesn't bother me. And I really noticed that this time, right? I thought like, why is this not? This is supposed to make people feel ill, or and I'm watching it with a lot of detachment. I wonder if like, is that genetic? Because I come from doctors who have cut up people, that I'm just fine with watching Oscar Isaac like throw around all these silicone body parts and fake blood on them. It is
Probably.
Del
The
Toro
guy
though, so
next to me was squirming in his chair while watching this. He could barely look at the screen, which was a very
yeah.
funny reaction.
It's like, let's
But it
replace
still
this
works.
knee. Why? Because it's gross. It's just like it's to gross out the audience. That's the point.
He has, like, I do love this about Del Toro, that he has both very romantic gothic sensibilities and also the soul of like a like a hammer horror, like pulpy, bloody. Just loves the gore, he loves the nastiness of it all, and brings it together. Um, I'm curious, Carson, then, if you want to lead us into the ending of the film. I don't know if by the ending you
Yeah.
mean the final scene
No.
in the Arctic,
Yeah.
or even like including the death of Elizabeth and William, that entire party scene, maybe.
So we build up pretty. I mean, like, I have my issues, but it's pretty standard getting to the death of Elizabeth, right? In the day of the wedding, it's very tragic, this emotional scene. We're just about to the conclusion where we've set up with the framing of the story. And they have the moment where the monster says, like, I will chase you. You are now mine. Like, I'm coming after you. Oscar Isaac runs off, and we get the chase that leads us to the Arctic. In between the death of Elizabeth, the one person who was alive, who showed this creature humanity. Between that and him forgiving Oscar, which is a death obviously partly caused by Oscar Isaac, quite directly, to him forgiving Oscar Isaac, to him, the scene on the boat where he says, it's okay, I forgive you. I think he literally says explicitly, I forgive you in this. It's 8 minutes of runtime. That's insane, right? Like to have in a 2.5 hour film, to be able to spend 8 minutes on the emotional weight from you killed the one person who saw me, who showed me what it meant to be human, to like, I forgive you for your sins and it's actually okay, bro, is insane work. And in between that, it's not even like all dialogue. There's chase, and then he has to buy the explosives, whatever, so we have to get to where we are. I think that is like such a criminal mismanagement of runtime and feature. That emotional journey is like so much of the heart of the film. And in that, you do get like the beautiful scene where he's like, can I get a mate? Can you make someone? Because in this version, he is immortal. We know he won't die no matter what you throw at him. And he gets refused that, quite cruelly, I think, is projected in the film. But I just think the ending is so rushed, where it's like, to me and my audience at least, it felt laughable at the end that he would forgive him, which is one of the more poignant moments in the book, which is one of the more thoughtful expressions of like, what is humanity, what is morality. I don't know. I felt like it ended just very, very weakly for me.
That's interesting. Like, I'm curious actually to know Hillary's thoughts before I give my own on the ending.
Yeah, the whole thing with Elizabeth and the death of William, like, William was such a neglected character, and the second his head hit the corner of that thing, I knew he was dead, and then Oscar Isaac crying over him, I had a hard time with because I thought, "You've been ignoring him for the past 2 hours." You even said that you kinda hated him because your dad liked him more than you, so you just took it out on him his whole life by, I don't know, using him basically up until that point. Um, I think that the forgiveness at the end of the film is a little shoehorned in because it's I think, to a degree, it might be some wish fulfillment for Del Toro. It's quite obvious from the press you read surrounding this film that it's something that he maybe wants to convey to his own children, and it's something that maybe it needed to pass between him and his own father, and that this film, in a way, is him reconciling those issues and playing them out. But, I did find it a little bit rushed and hard to buy considering, like, how quickly it happened. Um, and I think it also depends on, like, where maybe viewers stand as far as their own experiences, like, things that have been done to them, especially if it involves parents. Everyone has issues with their parents, and if someone's watching this and they're not ready to forgive their parents for however much they messed them up, maybe that scene is a little bit hard to buy. Or maybe they're in a place where they are it's wish fulfillment for them, like Del Toro, so they're able to get some relief or some sort of closure out of seeing this in a fictional story. So, for me, it didn't matter that much. It was a bit strange. It was just I don't know, the ending of the film was just very strange to me all around.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I do think the wish fulfillment also comes from just it felt like someone reading the book so many times and getting to that final part that we already said was like a bit weird even in the book, um, and actually giving them the final reunion that they were denied in the novel. There is that element that we talked about, like the creature going out to basically kill itself because it has lost all meaning, and to actually subvert that and change that and have them. I mean, you're witnessing basically their own retelling of their own lives, and they're both tired. They're both so done by it. Um, and I didn't find it shoehorned in so much because you're basically what you're watching for the last hour almost of the movie is the perspective of the creature, which is what the creature is telling to the captain, the crew, and Victor himself. And this is what Victor has been listening to this whole time, including reliving, the death of Elizabeth and William, and just this final moment of chase, of endless chase up until the end of the world. It is a moment where they've both kind of have reckoned in a way just by talking openly about their. It feels borderline like psychology 101. But it's like, I'm talking openly about my feelings and how I feel. You said your thing, I'm gonna say my thing, and at the end of it they recognize each other's different perspectives. It sounds very banal putting it like that, but that's almost how I saw it in the ending, and in a way that I found touching. Actually, I found it plausible. I mean, it's still a work of fiction with undead coming back to life, but I still found it plausible and actually very hopeful compared to the more nihilistic endings of all the other versions. All the other versions have to end in tragedy, or they have to end with a big climax. That's something that I mentioned with the Branagh version, where there used to be the water and everything. Oh my God, there's suspense. It's like, no, I like that he actually slows down at the end, and it goes for this smaller scale moment, intimate moment between the two of them, just actually embracing each other and connecting the circle from the first time they spoke. It's him showing him the light in the bedroom, learning to say his name, and then it's a different type of bedroom. The light is fading away from him, the sunrise is coming up, and just say my names with the same intention and the same passion and love that you had the first time when it still meant something to you. It's such a, I don't know, I found it to be so beautiful. Every time I watch it, it just made me like all warm and fuzzy inside. But I am also a sucker for Del Toro's more like melodramatic, cheesy, emotional sides of things. So this was just like made for me in a way. I totally get where the two of you are coming from with it feeling a bit rushed. or just not landing that emotional impact.
I just feel like if someone birthed me into a world immortal, in a world that would hate me, physically and emotionally abused me for like a month, try to burn me down in their castle as they explode their castle, abandoned me and just left me. And then when I try to talk to them and be like, "Hey, can you at least make me a wife or someone who will be with me because I'm going to be immortal?" And then they refuse me, and then as they try to murder me, they accidentally murder the person who like I love the most in the on the planet. I just think it would, for me, that does not feel plausible in the conversation they have in the film. And I get it's like fiction, right? Like whatever. But like for me, it just felt like such a jump in emotion when you look at like cards are on the table. What happened in this film? What are the relationships? From the monster's perspective, from the creature's perspective, especially, like I don't see how there's any love or respect for Victor in this version. Again, you also have like in the book, you can get, the full thoughts and everything. We talk about that quite often with these adaptations. So you just naturally have more of a perspective in that. But like here, especially because again, 8 minutes in runtime before, it's like the raw climax of Victor like fucking up this monster's life. Um, I don't know. I just see that as being like almost comical in delivery, but definitely valid, right?
I
It
don't know
makes
if
me
you.
wonder about parent-child relationships. There's something that I hear people say all the time is that once you're in the presence of your parents again, no matter what they've done to you, you automatically fall into that dynamic with them. And in a lot of cases, you still want their love, even if they're not going to give it to you. They're not going to accept you. You'll just take whatever scraps you have. So the only way, like, I can justify the scene in my mind is that wanting to kill this person, wanting to commit revenge on behalf of your life and what you've lost, and being confronted with him and he's dying anyway. Like maybe it was just a moment of, maybe it was a moment of forgiveness, but in the long run, maybe it isn't satisfying. And while we were talking about this, I was thinking about someone I know. It was a trans woman talking to other people about forgiving your family, and I can't remember how she put it, but she put it some way like prepare yourself for like the crushing dissatisfaction of forgiveness, something like that, where it's just like you can forgive people for the harm they've done you in the moment, and you cry and it's cathartic, but that doesn't make the pain go away. So at least he was able to have that with his father. He can do what he can with that down the line, but it's still going to be incredibly, what kind of life is he going to have, especially as an immortal? Maybe that's kind of the, it's not necessarily the questions being posed at the end. The ending is very much framed as a release. He's watching the sun. The sun is falling on his skin, the light, and he's crying. And that's kind of where things end. But I think as anyone knows, especially if we're talking about somebody who's immortal, he's gonna have a lot of time to deal with that on his own. But at least maybe he can go back to that moment and be like, well, at least I forgave him because I'm there now. But maybe he wasn't quite there. I don't know. It's taken some mental gymnastics, which is not a good sign. But I see what you mean, Carson. It just doesn't seem. Yeah, realistically, it seems really really tough to do. But who knows?
Hmm, it's a situation I hope not be in. Uh, Hopefully in the future, but it's a situation I've heard from other people, especially those who have more recently, even some lost their parents, and yeah, you're in like the classic. It's almost a cliche, but like the classic bedridden, hospital, and the time is coming, and actually having that catharsis can be healing. I don't know if Del Toro even had this with his father. I know he was very attached to him, but I think he said, I don't know if it was in the documentary or some other interview where he mentioned that if he had made the movie like 20 years ago, it would have been very different because since then he has become a parent in his own right and he's lost his parents. Um, and so just his vision and perception on life and death and forgiveness and all of that has changed in a way that maybe it will connect with us more in the future. Who knows? In 25 years, stay tuned. Read our letterbox review when we rewatch
Yeah, it's like my
Frankenstein
parents
after
just
going through
died and
trauma.
I'm feeling things. I want to forgive them. But yeah, I think there's so many kids who have that deathbed moment and what they actually want to ask is like they want to lean over their parents and say like, "Did you love me? Do you love me? Do you
It's one
love
final
me?" Like
moment of acceptance.
I think that's like all they I think that's all the kids want. And so many kids don't get it. And even though they could be in their 60s or 70s, like their parents could be dying in their 90s, there's still a child who wants to ask that, like, "Do you love me?" Because I don't know. And I think that that doubt is pretty universal, and it probably does apply to some viewers who watch this and they got really teary-eyed if they have dead or dying parents.
Yeah. And the last thing I'll say, I do like. There's something, I don't know. I found it to be beautiful after watching all these adaptations, after reading Frankenstein, after thinking about even other versions we haven't really talked about, that we also shouldn't talk about, to be honest, because most of them are not good. Um, there is something beautiful in having a story of Frankenstein, the origin, like an adaptation of the original text that's not just a reimagining of some sorts, that actually ends on a warm, positive, hopeful note for the future instead of being just a downer ending. Um, I like that. In a way that I feel like, again, it's you mentioned it, Hillary. It's wish fulfillment. In a way that I can accept.
My only thing is I wish it went further in that. I agree with that overall statement. I've talked about the nihilism and the ending. I was so mad. I was like, offer him a job on this boat now that y'all are friends. Like, it's so sad because he just, like, it is warm. But then he's like, okay, I'm going to go wander the Arctic alone with everyone in the world still hating me. Bye. Despite that he looks like a pretty normal guy. It's like, okay, bye, guys. And it's like, no, that was like a community that, like, you're also strong. Like, I think that was like a perfect moment to be like, oh, there is hope for him to have a community in the future and that people might not hate him, because otherwise it's like he's walking in the woods like fully clothed like a normal human with his Harry Styles hair, and he gets shot at just for like existing. So I don't know if there's any future for him, but like I do agree with that sentiment overall, but I would have preferred a little bit further on that.
You bring up a really good point, and it's something that, strangely enough, is addressed in the Branagh version. It might have been a line that was dubbed in, some actor in De Niro, where I think some random guy on the ship is like, "Take my hand and come with me," and De Niro says something like, "I am done with man." So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they do kind of address it, but it's in that harried, like, over the top way where it's like, "We're just throwing this in here." The w One thing I did think about with the ending of the Del Toro version is that when these men are incredibly hostile toward him, and the captain has to remind them, like, "Just let him go," or whatever. They haven't heard his story, and he killed a bunch of their friends in the beginning, horribly. So, I think that it's probably not for the best, but if we're going to
Self
play, like,
defense.
kind of, yeah, self-defense, kinda like quasi fan fiction, they know he's there. So if other expeditions come that route, they say like there is a guy there who can help you get out of a sticky situation if your boat is stuck. I'm just coming up with this now. So there may be hope for him. Although honestly, what I thought when I watched it, just because of the way he looks, I thought like, well, maybe he can cross over into the Anne Rice universe, and if he's immortal, he can be in a band with Lestat because he does kind of look like the lead singer of a band. So there's hope for him. And is I didn't see I, Frankenstein. Isn't I, Frankenstein about that? Like, just him, I don't
Continuing
know.
after
Yeah, like,
battling
is he but is it
demons.
a detective or something like that? I don't know.
That sounds
So,
incredible. I've never seen it though.
I've heard it's
Kind of
not
need
Aaron
good,
to.
Eckhart
Carson.
as Frankenstein's monster.
Yeah, it
Hold
kinda went up
on,
in
we're kind of
flames.
cooking.
Yeah,
Let him cook.
I don't know.
Carson's favorite new film.
Hold on.
The reviews are probably dismal, I'm assuming, or I don't know,
Or
maybe it
I
is a
want to
cult
say I
classic.
watched it when it came out. I think it was in the heyday of me watching every YouTube reviewer's review. So I want to say it was like 2012, 2013 when it came out, sometime around then. Um, yeah, wouldn't recommend. It's like a worse version of what like Dracula Untold
Oh,
did.
wow, 1 star, 1 star, 1 star. It's just
There you
all
go.
1-star reviews. Oh,
Quality,
I found one
quality.
that's 4. Okay, okay. Well, yeah, proceed with caution. I don't
One of
wanna
my
be
personal
responsible.
friends gave it 5 stars. So hold on now. Hold on.
Okay, I'm seeing my friends, so we don't have the same friends.
Stay
Obviously, they're
tuned for
all really
Carson's
low.
5-star review of this underrated. He's gonna text me like,
Mm.
"Hey Nick, why
I
didn't we
thought that
talk
this came
about
out in
I Frankenstein?"
2004. I am shocked that it came out in 2014. I just yeah,
Yeah.
my timing with when this came out is oh boy. Someone just wrote,
Oh,
"I
it's from one of the
unimpressed."
original writers of Underworld. There you go.
Whoa.
Okay, so
It all makes
I
sense.
mean, you guys laugh now. When we're back next year doing this, The Bride, the 2004 Hallmark movie, and like Victor Frankenstein, like that's gonna be the episode.
Mm.
It's the part two of our Frankenstein
The squeakquel, yeah.
retrospective. I think this is a good moment to transition into our final thoughts with a very heavy question. Maybe I know the answer already, but I'm curious. Carson, at the end of the day, which version of Frankenstein is your favorite from the book up until the Del Toro adaptation?
Oh, I mean, it's easily going to be James Whale's Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein. But I will say, like, again, that is not a representation of the novel. If you want something that is, if you really want to experience the story of the novel and kind of what these origins are, definitely check out the book. I mean, the book is the best version of it. And then if not the book, man, it's I would just say it's not worth it at that point. But yeah, check out the book, check out the James Whale version. Good times to be had.
Fair enough, fair enough. And how about you, Hillary? Do you also share the James Whale love?
I mean, out of these 3, yes, but I did rewatch Young Frankenstein, which is a parody, and I mean, that's got the highest score out of all of them.
Valid.
If I don't know if people listen to this, if they do follow me on Letterboxd, I had a lot of fun, paying my respects to everyone who has died in that film. I came with emojis for each of them that relate to their
Yeah.
characters because 'cause they're all gone now, and it's so sad, but fortunately, Mel Brooks is still with us. Out of the 3, definitely the
Surprisingly, I
James.
want to say.
Yeah, he's
Still
like
like
98, 99 years old, and he's still running strong, so,
bless him.
proof that not all the good ones die young. Um, but yes, out of the 3, definitely James Wales. I did wanna shout out Young Frankenstein as well, and like I mentioned before, although it's not, a faithful adaptation, I just can't tuck up Rory Kinnear's interpretation of the creature enough in Penny Dreadful, even though the show itself has its own problems and went off the rails near the end. Um, I wanted to highlight that as well. Um, and yeah, I had like another note or something I was going to say, and I immediately forgot what it was. So I am just going to turn it over, and if it comes back to me, I'll bring it up later. Um,
Can I also quickly,
Perfect.
because I didn't know we were recommending other versions, the Hammer horror version of Frankenstein is like wildly good. It goes much deeper. Like, I think it really captures the character of Victor better than probably any other adaptation has. Really recommend that. And yes, Young Frankenstein is great. It's wild that so much of like the set that they use for like the lab and stuff is from the original like 1930s
So good.
film. They just kept it all. Fantastic. But I would say if you want another adaptation, the Hammer version. I don't remember the full name of it. Very good.
Curse of
is that the
Frankenstein.
is that the one with Lee? Like I heard Christopher Lee play was in one of these Frankenstein adaptations, but I have not seen it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
Curse
I
of
believe
Frankenstein.
so.
It's
Yeah.
Christopher Lee and no, it's not.
okay.
It's Christopher Lee playing the creature and Peter Cushing playing Victor Frankenstein. So it's like the same
Okay.
thing they did with the Dracula.
That
Yeah.
no, that makes perfect sense. I remembered what I was going to say. As far as like what I would recommend actually is like what Carson said, which is read the book. And of course, I will highlight the YouTube version available via Rob Gall right now if you want to read that. There is also a version, an abridged version read by Christopher Lee on YouTube. That's a lot shorter. If you want to hear his epic intonations reading Shelley's text, then that's the way you should go. Play some heavy metal music in the background, make it even more epic. And honestly, what I'm kind of walking away from is that the book still hasn't been faithfully adapted as far as I know. And I think the best way to do it would be a mini series. It needs to be multiple episodes, really exploring and taking its time and really exploring the subtlety of what Shelley is doing with her book. And I think it would be very interesting if a woman directed it. I don't usually say that. I don't really ascribe to like gender lines as far as like who directs what, but it would be interesting to see a woman's take on this at this point, or another queer director. That'd be great. Someone bringing something fresh and new. We do have
Ryan
the
Murphy's Frankenstein.
no,
Stop.
no, I'm waving my arms,
Shut it
no.
down.
He'd probably be mad that Lordy has already been used, because he likes his characters super hot. In fact,
Evan
my
Peters is
friend's
still
younger
available, I
brother.
think.
Yeah, probably. My friend's younger brother is one of the most attractive people I know, and he's appeared in some of Ryan Murphy's stuff, which doesn't surprise me whatsoever. Very
When you were
good-looking
saying
guy.
when you're saying people review it as saying like, "Oh, step on my neck" or "choke me out," I was gonna say, "Oh, stop saying about Ryan Murphy's letterbox like that." But
It's mostly women talking about other women or men. Women have become a lot more brash as far as going online and writing things where I think you may have wanted to keep that to yourself. So, but yeah, I could see that easily being certain celebrities' letterbox comments. And I haven't seen any of the new stuff from Ryan Murphy, but I've heard a lot about it. It's just like, man, they're really eroticizing Ed Gein, and I'm like, that's just no, don't do that. That's weird.
Hillary, you should check out, and Nikki, I mean, everyone should check it out. Laura Moss's, it's called Birth/Rebirth. It's like an adaptation of Frankenstein, but it's
Right.
queer. It's from a female perspective. Very, very well done.
And there's also the Maggie Gyllenhaal version of The Bride coming out next
That's
year.
coming out. We also talked about with on Clappercast. We talked about Lisa Frankenstein. So I
Mhm.
think more than any, I watched Frankenhooker recently. I'm a big fan of Flesh for Frankenstein by Paul Morrissey. We would look here. Like I think more than anything, I don't know if I would even want another like straightforward adaptation. I feel like watching the Del Toro one, and I'm so glad he also said it himself in a way. It's like this is it for him. It's like I've achieved my dream. Now I'm just free to do what I want, and he wants to step away from those like big sets, big productions. Like he wants to go a bit smaller, a bit more intimate, something that's a bit more in the '70s style rather than these grand sets. And I think this should just be the way going forward with Frankenstein and these adaptations. I feel like the classical tale has been told. We don't need another Dracula like that. We don't need another Invisible Man like that. I think we need something that's like the Levi and Allen Invisible Man. I have to be honest, I'm kind of looking forward to the McGillen Bride of Frankenstein. I think this could be very special in its own way. We will see. We will see. We need something new, something fresh. And I'll go for last. I didn't say my own. Which version I prefer? I have to be honest. I want to give like a twofold answer. In a way, Bride of Frankenstein is probably my favorite adaptation, but at the same time, and it's not because I'm a fanboy, but I do really, really like what Del Toro did with this. I think more so, especially speaking about adaptations, more so than James Whale and Kenneth Branagh, he captured for me the soul of Shelley, the writing of Shelley, even the way the dialogue is so grandiose and with some beautiful prose here and there, and just the way people speak. It's not a very natural way of speaking, which fits with the unnatural way in which everyone speaks, especially the creature. In the book and the connections that he makes with the creature having to read Milton, the creature actually quotes Percy Shelley's Ozymandias. Like there's so many little ties and homages and like recognitions of what came before that are touching in a way. With that, we can go into our last segment before closing off this epic conversation. Our favorite quote from the book and our favorite scene from the movie. Hillary, why don't you read your favorite passage from the book?
Okay. Um, I flagged it, or I think I liked it on Goodreads, so I'm bringing it up. It's if our impulses were confined to hunger, thirst, and desire, we might be nearly free. But now we are moved by every wind that blows, and a chance word or scene that word may convey to us. And I thought that really describes where we are right now. Um, doesn't matter how much money you have, it doesn't matter how much material goods you have, it doesn't matter how much humans have, um, or how much we've evolved since Shelley wrote this book. We always want more, it's never quite enough, and there's this restlessness in us, and it's being fed by all of these new technologies and inventions that she is addressing during her time period, and it still applies today. Um, and then favorite scene, I actually really, really struggled with this. Um,
I think if you want, we can let Carson read his quote and then we all say the favorite
sure,
scene.
yes.
No, I wish I had a quote. I mean, I have a passage in mind. I just don't have it in front of me to read. I didn't realize that was the expectation. It's definitely in the book when he asked for the mate. I mean, we talked about it earlier, and I've already spoiled it as my favorite. But like, I think just that begging of, please, can you at least give me this? And is tragic. I think it's moving. I think it really also conveys. I like the fact that in the book they spread it out to where Victor does have that realization kind of maybe later on as he thinks about it, like, yeah, maybe this is not the best idea. I think that scene is like perfection, and I think it's also a very very touching scene. It's not my favorite scene, but I think it's very touching in Del Toro's version. I think it does that very well. I think that's a great scene. So
Yeah, I'm glad. I actually have a passage from that scene when the creature interacts with Frankenstein, where he says it's the creature speaking to him, saying, "Be calm. I entreat you to hear me before you give vent to your hatred on my devoted head. Have I not suffered enough that you seek to increase my misery? Life, although it may only be an accumulation of anguish, is dear to me, and I will defend it. Remember, thou hast made me more powerful than thyself. My height is superior to thine, my joints more supple, but I will not be tempted to set myself in opposition to thee. I am thy creature, and I will be even mild and docile to my natural lord and king, if thou wilt also perform thy part, the which thou owest me. O Frankenstein, be not equitable to every other, and trample upon me alone, to whom thy justice and even thy clemency and affection is most due. Remember that I am thy creature. I ought to be thy Adam, but I am rather the fallen angel, whom thou drivest from joy for no misdeed. Everywhere I see bliss, from which I alone am irrecoverably excluded. I was benevolent and good, misery made me a fiend. Make me happy, and I shall again be virtuous. This was like instantly. When I was ready, I was like, "This is so good."
So
It's
sad. That's all he wanted it was to be loved, and I
yeah,
can't help but think to myself, in other iterations of the story, what would have happened if he hadn't been rejected right away? Been taught to read and taught to, I don't know, just treated like a way any child should be raised? There wouldn't have been so
I
much
compassion and
destruction.
understanding.
Yeah.
Not so much destruction. Yeah.
I would love if anyone wants to go deeper on this emotion. I don't know where my copy is. I'm so mad. But Herculean Barben was an intersex person born way before anyone knew anything about intersex. And the book tells their journal and also just gives more details about their lives. And in a journal, they have this line where they say, "I was born in love," as they talk about how everyone rejects them for being intersex and how they can't find a place. She ends up killing herself at the end of the story, which is horrible. But that line is just like burned in my memory, where of just I was born to love, but society around me prevented that and burned me for that. And I think that putting that in conversation with Frankenstein is just like so powerful. So if anyone wants to go deeper, highly recommend the book Herculean Barben.
Absolutely. Thank you for the recommendation. What about them favorite scene, Hillary? Do you have anything in mind? It can be from one of the movies, all of the movies, two of the movies.
I'm really struggling with this one. I think I'm going down like a little bit more of a humorous route. One thing that blew my mind about the Del Toro version was how many gas cans were in that tower when
Oh, it's
Oscar Isaac is
amazing.
pouring gas. I was just like, there's like 500 gas cans. Why? I think it's going to come down to him getting blown up and ruining his leg. Like I have not had a laugh like that recently in a movie. I feel so bad saying it, and I would not mention it if anyone involved with the production was here. But man, I just blew up laughing. It was just such a comeuppance, just a great moment. So I'm sticking with that.
Which you kind of
Oscar
forget
Isaac's
about.
leg.
Like you do know he has the bum leg, like he has the prosthetic leg, but yeah, I
Yeah, he
forgot about
does.
that.
Actually, I'll bring up one thing that's kind of related to that. They gave Felix Kammerer nothing to do as William, and there's the one scene where he talks to Oscar Isaac while he's putting his prosthetic on, and he's able to do, like, some physical things, like, he kinda, like, bounces on the bed and hands him the cane, and, it was, like, the only time he was allowed to, like, maybe play or put a little bit of something into his character. So I just want to highlight this actor who's kinda given a thankless role and putting a little bit of physicality into it, a little bit of levity, because everything after that pretty much goes down the toilet as far as people dying and, revenge taking over the plot, so those are
Yeah,
my scenes.
he reminded me a lot of Charlie Hunnam in Crimson Peak. To be honest, I would borderline say this is like a blood cut. The way Del Toro talked about Pan's Labyrinth and the Devil's Backbone being blood cousins to one another, I would say the same thing about Crimson Peak and
Absolutely.
Frankenstein.
I love Crimson Peak much more than this one though.
It's probably my favorite
Just
Del Toro, actually. Crimson
it's
Peak.
just it's just creepy as hell. Just there's so much creepiness in Crimson Peak. Great gothic horror. So I'm
And lots of
recommending
like
that
visual
one.
parallels and reminds. And you were talking about William, and I felt the same way with Charlie Hunnam in that film.
It's like he's
Where it's
there
like he's almost
too.
just kind of there. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What about you, Carson? What are your favorite scenes?
I mean,
Scene.
I have to go with the original playing with the girl by the lake. I mean, what a beautiful, I mean, it's iconic,
Classic.
number one, but like, what a classic look at, like, also just this horrible curse of of this creature not knowing what he's doing, just trying to have fun. And he just thinks he's throwing her in, and then she doesn't come up, and the face that he gets. Oh my God, it's tragic. It's horrifying. It's so effective. There's a reason it's a classic, almost 100 years later.
True. That's a great scene. I have one scene from each of the movies, and mine ties directly to yours. I forgot how haunting the walk of the girl's father is through the town, with
Oh
a couple of
yeah.
shots that reminded me a lot of Nosferatu, like
Mm.
Murnau's Nosferatu. With like the almost Bavarian-looking town, wide shots. Um, and yeah, just like that walk with pure silence, just going through the streets carrying her body, it's not related to the creature. I do love the awakening of the creature as well. um but yeah, that part is, it's beautiful. It's moving. It's really moving. um I did like, despite the way it's very rushed, I did like the barn burning sequence in the Kenneth Branagh version, with the creature getting very upset and ends up burning everything. I think there's something there where the sets really work, and the snow and everything is really effective. That's like a glimmer of what the movie could have been like with more time to just let the film breathe a little. And in a similar way, like there's many things I do like about the Del Toro one, but I did really like, and we somehow didn't even mention him, but everything with I want to say Doug Bradley every time, David Bradley, who plays the blind man. I called it like the spirit of the forest sequence. It's so good. It's so good. The way
Mm.
he ends up learning to talk, to like, the way he says he wanted to be this family and part of this family and just belong with them, which is something that the creature even mentions in the book, that's not really present in other adaptations. And the conversations that they have and reading the books, and just, oh, it made me so happy that, like, knowing where it was going to go, because every story of Frankenstein has to go with the blind man in some way, of him losing the friendship with the blind man. In this case, it's much more violent, but even then, the walk that he has through the now burnt down laboratory and finding the stills of photography, also something I don't think they could have done with, if they had set this movie in like 1790 or something. I think that's a very strong visual. um yeah, good film, but also good conversation. I'm very happy to have had both of you here to talk about all things Frankenstein, and I'm happy the listeners have stuck with us until this very moment. Thank you, Carson, for being here. Where can our listeners find you and your work and your voice online?
Yeah, find me on Letterboxd, just Carson Tamar. But definitely check out Clappercast. I know both Hillary and Nick are on there often, talking about old movies, new movies, every single week, some fun stuff. And you can find that at Clapper Podcast on Twitter, I believe. So you can find us there for sure.
Amazing. And how about you, Hillary?
You can also find me at Letterboxd. I'm under the name Degelle, Degelle. If you go there, you can click on the campsite.bio link, or you can just put it in any browser, campsite.bio/Degelle, and that'll take you to everything I'm currently doing on the internet or not doing and neglecting. So knock yourself out.
Yeah, all the links to these profiles will be in the show notes below. Meanwhile, you can follow me everywhere at LippyGround97. My work you can find on YouTube and Vimeo at Enjoy the Movies. And of course, you can follow this podcast on Instagram at Anatomy of Adaptation Pod. Stay tuned, because next week and this November we've had one episode a week, right before the Christmas break and some good, like, 1 or 2 months of holiday from the podcast. But stay tuned, because I will be joined by the good Jakub Flash to talk about the last big Stephen King adaptation that's coming out, The Running Man. So stay tuned for that. We hope to see you very, very soon, and we wish you a lovely day. Goodbye.